Tonight, DC Comics has decided that the best character to discuss the intricacies of the afterlife is goddamn Harley Quinn. Reverse Flash is told to his face that he is the weakest member of the team and he does not have a single leg to stand on, and Wonder Woman meets up with All-Star Section 8, and the results are... oh boy. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 210 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and for anyone watching the visual version, so I said last time, I'm moving. I was recording that one way in advance, and this episode feels like it's been forever since the last one because I'm recording this, once again, right up against the deadline. But for anyone watching the video version of this, you may notice things look ever so slightly different. I did my absolute damnedest to make it completely obvious, unobvious, that anything changed. I still have all the same set dressings, everything else going on, but what I didn't account for was the lighting. It's not like I'm poorly lit, but I'm very differently lit, because this place that I am currently filming in, my new location, does not have overhead lighting, and I don't really know how to account for that. So I'm still experimenting. Things might look a little bit wonky over the next few episodes, but I'm working on it. Do not adjust your sets. It is not on your side. It is on mine. Anyway, tiny little thing there. Everything else about this show, we should probably just jump right into it, because despite the fact there are only 12 comics, one of those is a special. It's a Harley Quinn special that I completely forgot was coming out this week, and the fact that I am recording this right up against the deadline is a consequence of that. So, yay. Let me just tell you what all the books that were coming out, though, is, so we can jump on that. In alphabetical order, we have Action Comics, All-Star Section 8, Batman, Batman/Superman, Catwoman, Earth 2 Society, Gotham Academy, that road trip special I mentioned before, Justice League United, New Suicide Squad, Red Hood and Arsenal, and Starfire. So all that is in today's episode. Probably not that much of a packed one. I will say that the Action Comics and the Batman and Superman, both those are written by Greg Pak. Both of those have some tie-ins together. If you're gonna do Batman and Superman, make sure you at least listen to Action. It's got a little bit of stuff tying it together, but I try to explain it as best I can as it's happening there. But regardless, don't want to waste any more time. It's already going to probably be a decently long one, so let's just jump right on into, let's face it, the road trip special. Harley Quinn, the Road Trip Special, #1, written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by like 12 different people. Bret, Blevins, Moritat, Flaviano, Armentaro, Pasquale, Qualano, and Jed Dougherty. Probably more. That's who I have written. So, yeah. It's a road trip story, and it's double-sized, so I'm going to move through this very, very quickly. We open up on a trailer, like a camper on its side, and Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn are our three leads. They're just sunbathing out, saying how they're 45 miles from anyone and anything. And then a little bubble of Harley says, "We're opening with this to catch some eyes, but let's go back to the real beginning of the story." And we see Harley is helping an old woman through some therapy at her job when she gets a call from her mom saying, "Hey, your Uncle Lou died. I know you were really close with him. He was your favorite uncle, but he is being cremated. He moved out to California. He's being cremated, and he would like to be buried with his wife out here in Long Island. Also, he willed you a camper, which is out in LA, and you need to get that back across country again." So she wants to turn it into a girls' trip. She calls on Poison Ivy, who's doing this thing in Gotham. She's got Batman all strung up, and it's this whole thing where, like, she's just adding green to the outside of buildings, and Batman's like, "But this isn't your property." And she's like, "Okay, but, like, who cares?" But then when she gets the call, she just leaves Batman alone. And then Catwoman's looking at this jewelry, which has been stolen. And she's like, boy, I wish I could steal that from whoever stole it, but they're out in California, and I have no reason to go out there. And then Harley tells her the plan. She's like, great, sounds cool, I'm in. So we see that there's a flight to LA. She takes some sleeping pills and ends up mauling some guy in her sleep. When she gets there, she meets up with Poison Ivy and Catwoman. They go out clubbing at a hotel for the night, and it ends up just being Harley and Ivy, and they're like, what happened to Catwoman? And we see that she's tracked down the guy who stole these jewels, whose name is Dark Wolf, and he wears a dog mask, and he's just standing in front of a mirror in his underwear wearing the jewels, and Catwoman comes in, starts attacking him. She distracts him with a big juicy steak, which he throws out the window, and he just dives after it stupidly. We then cut back to the party. Some guy's hitting on Ivy and Harley, and Catwoman shows back up to punch him in the face. Harley gets pushed into the pool. She drags down Catwoman and Ivy with, and just when she thinks she's going to be like dunked, they just give her a big hug because they're having the best time ever. So we cut to the next morning. They're talking about how their plan is to go pick up the ashes, get the camper, and then start their road trip back. Harley's got a hangover, though, so they go to a fast food place. Catwoman talks about like the science behind why fast food cures hangovers. And then the guy who is their cab driver, I guess they treated for fast food as well. He says some pervy thing about getting a free cab ride, and so they shove him through the fast food sign and drive off with his cab. So they make fun of LA traffic. They get to Sheila, who I genuinely don't know who Sheila is, but she's the one who's in charge of everything here. And she's like, yeah, all right, sign this paperwork. The camper will be yours. And then here are the ashes. They show everything getting hooked up, gassed up, ready to go. And then they start making their way out of LA. They pass by Vegas. Harley's like, let's stop there for a while. 2 days pass. And then we see that they have been driving on the road outside of Vegas with the camper filled up with all these Vegas like circus freaks and stuff like that. Harley tells Ivy and Catwoman, let's play truth or dare. They do. Harley gets truth of whether she'd rather kiss Green Lantern or Batman, or date Green Lantern or Batman, to which point she's like, well, I already made out with Batman, so I guess Green Lantern. And Catwoman's like, I'm sorry, you did what? And she's like, yeah, well, that's a different question. She then dares Ivy to get naked because Lord knows that has to happen in every book. And then they dare Harley not to talk for 15 minutes. And then Catwoman and Ivy just start saying all these super cool places they could hit up on the road trip, but all sound boring. So they're definitely going to skip it. And then after 3 minutes, Harley's like, I want to go to all those places. Stop it. You're killing me. So we see the trailers once again on the road. Catwoman's driving the car up front, and then Darkwolf shows up, and he's like, how dare you steal my jewels? Take this. And he like bounces into the back of the trailer with his car, causes it to swerve off the road. The car crashes, the trailer crashes, and Darkwolf's like, haha, my revenge. But then he loses control, crashes into some cactuses. Harley and Ivy, who were inside the trailer, come out and just start chastising him. And he's like, my beef's with Catwoman. It's like, well, now your beef's with us because you just crashed our ride. So Harley takes some cactus like ends, shoves them onto her fist, and starts beating the crap out of Darkwolf until finally he's unconscious and like probably almost dead. Ivy says she's going to try to call AAA while Catwoman is disposing of the body. So we get to the part where we open up the issue with, they're all sunbathing, and then they realize, okay, there hasn't been another car on this road. We can't get any signal. What are we supposed to do here? And finally, they see a car driving up the road. Harley flags it down, and turns out they're on an Indian reservation. So the driver there is like, oh, well, we're going to have to get you off the reservation. It's about 35 miles. You can hop in the back of the truck, but you can have any of the drinks in the back except for the marked ones. Don't drink the marked drinks. To which point Harley gets in the back and says, he said something about only drinking the marked drinks. So Catwoman doesn't take a swig, but Harley and Ivy do. And wouldn't you know it, a Harley Quinn book with a hallucination sequence. Who would have thought? it's a whole thing of Harley thinking she's got to do the high dive and she gets kicked off of it. And then it goes to a vor thing where she gets swallowed by Ivy, goes into her stomach. And then there's a Mad Hatter-esque dinner where all of her friends devour her like she's a Thanksgiving dinner. It's not gory or anything, but it's somebody's kink. And then she pulls out a Grim Reaper scythe and cuts off all their heads and says, all right, that's the end of that. Then we go into Ivy's hallucination where she's in Gotham. There's a cat that I guess is meant to be Harley in that situation. And she starts causing green to appear all over Gotham. And Batman shows up and he's like, are you the one doing all this? And she's like, yep. And he's like, no, I think it's super cool. This is amazing what you're doing here. And Ivy's like, well, thank you. And he's like, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the cat. And now the cat looks more like Harley Quinn. And Batman starts making out with the cat, which is somebody's kink. And then actual Catwoman shows up and says, hey, I don't have a hallucination sequence because of this book's low page count, so stop making out with my man. And so Cat Harley and Catwoman start cat fighting, and then Batman asks Ivy if she wants to get a frappuccino. So we cut to Harley and Ivy coming to in the back of the car. Catwoman's like, yeah, you guys were tripping balls for like 2 days straight. And they're like, why do I feel so non-rested if I was asleep for 2 days? It's like, no, you were awake. You were doing crazy things. It's all on YouTube. Ah, ha, ha, ha. So now they're at the Grand Canyon. Harley sees this guy on a motorcycle and it's just like, are you going to try to jump it? And he's like, no, you'd have to be insane to try to jump the Grand Canyon. And then she steals the motorcycle and is about to try to jump the Grand Canyon. Ivy pulls her off at the last second. The guy's motorcycle goes over and crashes into the ravine. And they talk about whether or not they're like one with the universe and whether Uncle Lou is like watching over them or anything at any point. Whatever. Colorado, giant yarn ball, Catwoman's into it. Pie shop in Kansas, they're enjoying pie. Chicago, they're in Chicago. Until finally we see them driving down the road and they pass by Bizarro and Jimmy Olsen, thus officially making this a tie-in with the Heath Corson book going on as part of the DCU. And so they hop in the camper because, you know, they can go a couple miles at the very least. They're trying to get to Canada. And Harley plays Truth or Dare with them and says, okay, Jimmy Olsen, truth. And she asks whether or not Jimmy and Bizarro are a couple. And Bizarro says, me and Jimmy, we am. To which Harley's like, I knew it. And Jimmy's like, no, he always speaks the opposite of what he means. He means no. He means no. To which then Harley then turns to Bizarro, says truth or dare. He says dare. And she dares him to get naked and fly around the ship or the camper. To which point then I guess they've reached their limit. They get out of the ship and Bizarro's like, Bizarro hates truth or dare. And Jimmy's like, shut up, man. So we see that they're approaching their way back to New York. Ivy wakes up Harley one more time and says, hey, I was looking around the camper. I found this photo book from your Uncle Lou. It seems like it's got a bunch of memories in here. I thought it would be something you would enjoy. And they do have some heartfelt moments of Harley basically saying like, oh, you know, it was such a good time with them. I really do miss him, all this stuff. So they get to the cemetery. Catwoman and Ivy give Harley a minute. She goes up to the place where her aunt is laid to rest. And she's like, yeah, you know, you guys wanted to be buried under this pine tree, but the pine tree got struck by lightning. So now it's just dead. You know, and she recounts all the happy times that they had, all this other stuff and how much she misses them. Ivy comes up and is just like, hey, you know, you doing all right? Everything good? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. And, you know, I'm hoping they're out there in the afterlife or whatever. And Ivy comes up to the tree and says like, man, it sucks this tree died. And she's like, yeah, well, everything else in here is dead. I guess that's just what it is. And she's like, no, it doesn't have to be. And so she pulls out some oak tree seeds because that's all she has. And immediately it just sprouts up. It's huge. And it's this beautiful oak over top of the graves of her uncle and aunt, and she's so happy about it. She gives Ivy a big hug, and we then cut to a few hours later. They're back in Coney Island. They're up on the rooftop enjoying a cookout. Ivy and Catwoman both are like, yeah, we can't stay. We got to get going right after the party, but, you know, we got our own stuff. And they do a whole extended sequence of maybe you guys could stay one more night and play Toss the Beaver. And they're like, is that what we think it means, Harley? And then she pulls out her stuffed beaver and is just like, it means we throw this beaver around. What did you think it means? And then Ivy literally points out, like, is that how we're going to end this, with a bunch of innuendo? And Harley's like, I don't know what you're mentioning, but nope, to my Uncle Louis, blah, 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 whatever. So... Look, the end of the issue is surprisingly heartfelt. Like, as for the rest of the issue, which is just a normal Harley Quinn written book, it's got all the hallmarks of it, it's all its own thing. The ending of the book does have some heartfelt messaging, to the point where I wonder if something did actually happen, like in the life of Amanda Conner or Jimmy Palmiotti, because it feels very genuine. It feels very much from the heart there. And obviously, I don't think there's anything going on specifically in the early part of September, that is to say, like, go on a road trip and your uncle's dead ashes. It's not like it's a holiday or anything like that. So I don't know. It's heartfelt in some places. I do like the art in this pretty consistently throughout. Obviously, the dream sequence messes it up. It does some weird stuff there, but it's not bad at any point. It's a perfectly fine issue. It just feels so strange to have this here. I guess I'll say a 7. Like, I think the jokes actually kind of land a little better than normal Harley, so kudos on that. It's just, I don't know what more to say. It's a weird thing to have this issue in the first place, but the fact that we have it, I didn't hate it. I actually thought it was pretty okay at times, but 7's about as high as I can go. Batman number 44, written by Scott Snyder and Brian Azzarello, art by Jock. So we interrupt your regularly scheduled story in order to tell you post-Zero Year, something that happened right after 0 Year. So we see a dead body. Batman introduces it as a kid. He's like 15 years old, and there's crows pecking at his body, and he's just in the marshes way outside of Gotham. So he comes out there, he checks on it, and he's looking at the body. Gordon comes out, he's like, I swear, man, I was hoping you'd bring me out here to show me your bat swamp boat or something. Who's this? And Batman says, I've run his face, I know all the stuff. His name is Peter Dugio. He is 15 years old, he's from the Narrows, and he's full of bullet holes. And Gordon's like, okay, seems like a gang thing, because that part of the Narrows you're talking about is run by a gang called the 4-5s. They're pretty aggressive. That seems like he was shot up and dumped out here. And Batman says, actually, he fell. He has these bullet holes, but he died via being dropped from an extremely high height, and he landed here. And Gordon's like, well, I don't see how that's possible, because we retired all the police blimps. The airport's on the other side of town. There's like no air traffic information. There's no way that could be the case. And Batman's already marking off leads in his head. He's like, all right, so ever since 0 Year, there's been more and more super villains coming up. We've got Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, Clayface, Poison Ivy. They've all started up. And he says, well, I've run through them. They don't make any sense, but I do have someone who's involved with gangs and has something to do with flight. And that's Penguin. So he goes to Penguin's hideout, or rather Penguin's blimp, I guess. He's got a blimp going on. And he goes through Penguin's thing saying like, yeah, he started small. He's working with a lot of smaller gangs. And his whole thing is that he leaves them an exotic bird to take care of. And if they fail at doing that, then the deal is off. So Penguin tries zapping Batman with electricity out of his umbrella, to which Batman's already got contingencies built in for. So everyone else gets shocked, and he's still standing. We then see the Penguin is left in a bird cage dangling over the side of a building. And he's like, hey, Penguin, tell me about Peter. And he's like, what do you, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why don't you go after Gotham's real criminals? And Batman has this little mental thing of a news article talking about how the real criminals are the corporate interests and all that stuff that are forcing bad moves in Gotham. But Batman paints the rope that is holding him up with birdseed. And he's like, you better start talking. So we see that Penguin's starting his plans of making the Iceberg Casino by freezing part of the Gotham River. He got these huge machines to do it. And then in walks Peter, and he's like, hey, Penguin, let's make a deal. And Penguin's like, who the hell are you, kid? And he's like, my name's Peter. Here's the deal. My father runs the corner store down in the Narrows, and my brother got killed in recent gang infighting down there, the 4-5s and all that. So my dad told me, do not let the 4-5s take control of that store. So I'm coming to you. I run this store. We can sell whatever product you need selling through that store. I know that sort of business. And all I need from you is the ability to like help take out the 4-5s. And Penguin's like, all right, let's talk. So at that point, Batman's like, all right. And so the deal went sour. You put him up in one of your blimps and you dropped him. That's what you did, right? And Penguin's like, no, you idiot. You don't know anything about this city if you think that's what I do. So we then get a little bit about how, you know, he's been away from this city for so long, but he was born and raised here. He does know a bit about it. And throughout the issue, as he's thinking about stuff related to this city, for instance, now it's an African-American neighborhood that doesn't get the proper attention it should from the cops. He is seeing these news articles pop up, like these little snippets, little cutouts of news articles, and that is a recurring theme throughout. So he makes his way down to the corner store, which has since been set on fire. He sees some kids bumming around. He scares them away. And inside is one of those exotic birds and some members of the 4-5 gang. So Batman starts knocking them out as they start trying to attack him. He eventually meets up with the leader of the 4-5s called Tano. And he's like, look, what are you doing here? What's up? And he's like, Peter Dugio, what happened to him? And he says, yeah, Penguin immediately took the deal, took this shop from this kid, and then offered it up to us as like a peace offering. And so now we took control of it. Peter, when he heard about that, he got back to his shop. He was so immediately full of rage that he charged after some of my guys. And like, I was willing to offer him a spot in the crew at that point. He was going at it. However, he was so adamant with the deal he made with his father, do not let this shop fall in the hands of the 4-5s. He set the whole thing on fire, and that's what you're looking at now. And Batman's like, and then what? You took him up in a helicopter and you dropped him? And he's like, how the hell would I have access to a helicopter? I'm a low-level street gang guy. What are you talking about? So he cuts off the head of the exotic bird and is just like, yeah, well, when it was all over, he was gone. Don't know what to do. So at that point, we see Batman follows some more leads. He catches up with this cop named Ned Howler, who apparently was called to the scene after the shop went up and there was fighting and all that to take down some gang violence. Batman looks into on him, sees that he has a whole history of being a bit too quick on the draw, a bit too easy to pull his gun, especially when it comes to young black men. And so when Peter comes out of the smoke and rubble of the fire, we see Ned's there with his gun drawn. He's yelling, telling him to lie down, do whatever, but apparently he doesn't move fast enough. Ned pulls the trigger and just leads him there on the pavement to bleed out. And so Batman's like, all right, enough. What did you do with him? How did you cause his death to happen? He's like, I shot him. I thought I killed him, but when I came back there with like backup and stuff like that, it was a bloody puddle and it's gone now. So I don't know what to tell you. So Batman's now kind of out of leads. And he decides, I have to go tell the father. I got to go talk to this kid's father because the father was in the hospital. That's the whole reason he left the place to the son, is that he couldn't take care of himself. So he goes there and he's like, maybe I shouldn't. Like, he's not got long to live. I should just let him be in peace. But then in comes who turns out to be Peter's cousin. And he's like, is it true? Peter only had one sneaker when you found him? And it's like, yeah, that's true. And it's just like, oh man, I told him not to do it. And Batman's like, wait, you know how he got out into that field? And it's just like, yeah, I told him that, you know, if you wanted something done around here, you had to go to the bank. And he's like, what, the bank? Like money? Like, is that what it is? And he's like, no, the people who like really have the money, the people who have the influence and all that. And it turns out his cousin said, you got to go to Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne was the one. And this has been seeded throughout all of like the cutout stories. Turns out that the reason that corner shop was a good place of business for Penguin to begin with is because the whole neighborhood of the Narrows was being bought up because Bruce Wayne announced his like Gotham revitalization plan. He was saying like, we're going to build buildings down in the Narrows and make it a better place to live. So the gentrification immediately took over. The dad refused to sell, and that's how this entire mess came to be. And Peter went up to Bruce at a press conference, tried to get his attention. Didn't happen. And he's just like, yeah, so people like that, they always just ignore us. So he decided he wanted to be more like you, Batman, and how he was going to take action into his own hands. And Batman says, okay, how? And the cousin explains that there is a place in Gotham called Blossom Row. I believe that's correct. Blossom Row, it's a street that never got cleaned up after 0 Year. It's still fully wilderness. And anytime people are just fed up with Gotham as a whole, they head out down towards Blossom Row. And there's a legend that at the end of the alleyway in Blossom Row, there's a man standing there waiting with something special made just for you. And we see it's Mr. Bloom, a much earlier version, a much shorter version. But he's there, and he gives a serum to Peter, and he drinks it. So we cut over to Batman making his way down Blossom Row. He's got some like pesticide or flamethrower or something. He's spraying on the plants, keeping it away from him. And as he gets down into a warehouse at the end, there's nothing. It's empty. There's no trace. Whatever it was, it's gone. And we see Batman standing over the city, and he's like, so really all this was a very simple case of like, a guy gave some drugs to a kid and he got in over his head. Like it was simple top to bottom. But then you get this shot of Gotham City with all the cutouts overlaid over top of it. And you see just how many moving parts there were that drove Peter to make the decisions that he did. And it was never as simple as just a kid getting drugs. There were all these factors that led into it from every side. So we see the fallout of what actually happened was with the serum that he got from Mr. Bloom, he was so much stronger. He went down and started fighting some gang members, and all of a sudden from his back sprouts giant bat-like wings, and he soars up into the air. He flies up there for a while until eventually it wears off, and he falls down dead to the ground. And Batman says the only problem here was that I wasn't there to catch him. I wasn't there soon enough. You gotta be there soon enough to catch these kinds of kids before these choices are made that can't be undone. So as he comes down off a building, he lands next to the same kids that he scared off from before. They start running again, and Batman just stops him and says, hey, wait, talk to me. And the kids are like, are you serious? And he just stands there and listens. And that's the issue. It's solid. The Jock art's fantastic. I like the message being told as well. It's a deeper, more personal thing that I would have come to expect. It still forwards the plot to some extent. Like a lot of times whenever there's a cutaway issue like this in the trade paperback, they'll put it like the end. They'll put it at the end of the issue or the end of the book because it doesn't influence anything. It's just kind of its own standalone story. But this one's left in place. This one's put right in between the issues it should be, and that's because it does give this definition to Bloom. It does give this extra thing of, Bruce has been around Bloom. Obviously, that's something that was just heard about before, but it disappeared. And at that point, it was just a man handing out drugs, a man handing out a bit of morphogenic drugs, mind you, but still not a major threat. And we get to see how that evolved over all these years in Gotham as well. So, no, top tier writing, top tier art. Really did enjoy this issue. It's got some social commentary as well. So I think I'm going to say this one is easily. I am going to give this one the 9. It's really, really good. I cannot speak highly enough of it. The only thing that I would criticize it for is having it be Bloom, while good for the arc, does remove kind of a timelessness from this issue. It could have been something that was an all-timer if that was not already there, but it's either way, it's still a fantastic one. Action Comics number 44, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder and Howard Porter, but Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder are both on story credit. So, okay, last issue we had Superman fighting against these shadow monsters. We ended up with what turns out to be the mayor is one of the shadow monsters, and it starts attacking this cop, and then Superman shows up and says, hey, don't worry, cop lady, we're all in this together. And then this issue just kind of like half picks up right where the story left off and half skips over a bunch. Like it feels like a lot is missed. So we're at City Hall. We see a bunch of cops are fighting against the shadow monsters along with Superman. The mayor comes out and she is now turning full shadow monster side, and she says, "Hey, my name is Wrath." Like, that's her name. That's her villain name. And she starts ensnarling people in all of her shadow tentacle stuff. And Superman reacts to this. He says Wrath and then gets super angry about it. And I looked it up. I cannot find any existence of the character before this issue. I think this is new, but it's the book's like treating it as if, oh yeah, Wrath, of course. That means something. So at that point, he's like, oh yeah, I absolutely want to attack you. And she's like, cool, I get stronger from you doing that, so continue. Back over on the Clark Kent neighborhood where Lee is, we see that they're cleaning up, they're doing whatever, and as they look down the street, they see that a whole bunch of people are turning into shadow monsters. They're being influenced by Wrath at a distance, and they're like, oh, we got to be careful. But look, that one cop Jefferson's still lying in the street. We got to go help him. So the whole neighborhood rushes in, ready to fight the shadow monsters in order to save Jefferson. And Lee just starts swinging around a big metal pole to attack all of them. Meanwhile, in the main fight, we see Superman starts getting knocked down by Wrath. He's just like, the more I punch, the stronger she gets. What am I supposed to do? And then in comes that one cop, Petrozelli, who we just got introduced to at the end of the last issue, saying how she didn't like Superman running around. Now she's shooting the mayor because, wouldn't you know it, it's better to be on Superman's side. And he reaches out when she gets blasted back and just like, Petrozelli, are you okay? And she's like, stop, I'm fine. And he's like, I can see your blood. No, you're definitely not. She's like, whatever. We're all in this together. So you got to get in there and finish it, Superman. And he's like, oh, I'll do it. And mentally, he tells himself, like, this is what Wrath wants. But she wants it out of anger or like just general punishment or whatever. Like, that's the sort of thing that she's after. I'm doing this out of a righteous anger, which I guess is different, but she still keeps laughing regardless. So we cut back over to Lee, and she's trying to hold off the shadow demons when, wouldn't you know it, that scratch that she got on her arm like 3 issues ago, underneath Superman's cape bandage, it starts exploding out in shadow energy. And as Superman blasts Wrath back into a car, she's like, haha, now I'm ready for the real fight. You've given me so much energy. Goodbye. And she kind of just fades away as Superman recognizes, oh no, something's going on back down in my neighborhood. So we see basically the whole neighborhood's up in flames. Lee is blue-eyed, like glowing, has the arm of one of the shadow monsters, and starts running towards one of the exploding buildings. And Jimmy Olsen's like, oh God, Lee, are you okay? Oh God. And as she goes into the building, the whole thing just crumbles. It just explodes down around. And Jimmy's like, oh my God, she just brought down that entire building on her own. And then she comes busting out the side of another building. In comes Superman, who's like, oh God, no. She's infected. Damn you, Wrath. And he immediately starts throwing punches at Lee. And Lee's just like, what? And starts making like confused monster noises, but doesn't fight back. And Superman's like, I'm sorry, hold on, what? What's going on? And then Lee says Clark's name, and he's just like, oh God, you're still in control. But then why did you just knock out the side of this building? And we see that apparently the building that was on fire was full of people, and Lee was just helping them to find a way out, standard Superman style. So Superman's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were still in charge of things. We can get you to a doctor. We can get that looked at. We can get it all taken care of and gotten out of you. And Lee's like, no, it's cool. It took me a minute to get used to it, but like, I feel like I'm supposed to have these powers. It feels right. And Superman's like, that's extremely dangerous. And she's like, yeah, well, so are you. So they come to an understanding, and Lee's like, yeah, I'm good. And then we basically just cut forward like a day or so. So everyone in the neighborhood's kind of just taking care of themselves. They're doing what they can for their neighbors. We see a group of people are putting a car that was flipped back upright. And Superman comes up and like, hey, you guys need a hand? And they're like, what? No, we're already done. And they push it back on the wheels. And they all just start leaving, and Superman's like, all right, cool. What's up, man? And so Lee and whatever that one guy's name is, I can't even remember it. The one guy who's like really hot-headed. They're all just like, hey, why are you shirking off Superman? He saved all of us. You can't turn your back on him. And there's like, well, we didn't see him doing anything. He just, like, none of this stuff would have happened if he didn't show up in the first place. Go home, alien. And they're like, oh, that's the spray-painted message that was in your apartment, Clark. These are the punks who did it. Let's show them a lesson. And Jimmy's like ready to throw fists. And Clark's just like, hey, it's cool. Like, I came back here because you guys needed help. You need to do your thing. But Lee's now got this under control. The whole neighborhood's able to take care of itself. It doesn't matter what they think about me. I just want to make sure they're safe. And his narration's like, deep down, I want to be everybody's friend. And like, this does hurt a little bit. But you know what? That's what it is. And also, I'm going to go out and hunt down Wrath wherever she is, because screw her. She's awful. And then we get the Howard Porter art, which is an epilogue where Wrath is making her way down some seedier side of the city. She passes by some guy in a car who's trying to hit on her, and when she doesn't respond, he just yells after her, calling her names. She ends up going into a hotel where the concierge is like, oh, can I help you? And she's like, oh, I'm just meeting a friend. He's like, oh, sounds fun, wink, 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 wink. And as she walks on, she's like, God, everywhere you go, there's more and more filth in this city. This sucks. So she walks into a hotel room, and then all of a sudden it's this cosmic place with lights and floating rocks and stuff. And she says, is everyone ready? And some more doors open up inside, and a bunch of shadow monsters come out saying, yes, it's been 2,000 years, but we are ready. And they say how, there's been too little action, but she says, oh no, I prepared the way. He's on edge. We've taken almost everything we need from him. Now you guys take your true forms. And the shadow demons do something to either possess and or kill the two guys who hit on her and were winking at her on the way up. And that's it. That's the issue. Okay. Positives. I think Lee having shadow powers and then having control of them is pretty good theming. It's pretty good in terms of like, not everyone in power or who has power is inherently bad. It is what you do with it that matters. Obviously, the shadow powers is supposed to represent that idea of power. That's why it was given to the cop to begin with. But like, I appreciate the idea that it is what you do with it, but it's something that has to be kept under control. Theming, top notch, down with that. The villain of Wrath, it was done too weirdly. I know we're setting up for a future arc here, but like, it just felt weird that this is the way that we're doing this. So it's not that it's... I guess what I really wanted is any sort of explanation as to like why Superman was so pissed off about Wrath. Because I don't think we've met her before. If it's happened in some other book, so be it. But like, you need to tell me that like, oh, I met her shortly after I lost my powers, but stuff that hasn't happened yet in the continuity of the order of books or whatever. Just say something that makes me know it's coming. But this makes me feel like I missed an issue. And then on top of that, the nature of just the entire issue did feel kind of rushed. It did feel kind of like, okay, we're done with this arc now because collectively over the Superman line, we're moving out of this truth arc and moving into something else. So yeah, it's got problems. It's not bad though. It's not a bad issue. So I think I'm going to say this one is a 7.5. 7. It's a 7, but like I can appreciate the positivity of the message it was trying to say. It just felt a bit rushed. Justice League United number 13, written by Jeff Parker, art by Paul Pelletier. So this issue's kind of just the start of a new arc. I think we got introduced to Batgirl last issue as being part of the team, but this one we pick up with Sergeant Rock in 1940 in France, specifically the town of Aracourt. And we see it's under bombing, World War II, easy companies making their way in, trying to bring out any locals and like evacuate them from the town because Germans are coming in. And Sergeant Rock goes into a place. He sees a man sitting at a table with a big old handlebar mustache, being like, hey man, you got to get out of here. Allez-vous, let's go. And the guy answers in English, like, I understood you. The force should have rolled in last week, but your platoon's been making a heroic effort to hold them off, so don't worry about it. And Sergeant Rock's taken aback, but we see he hides when some Germans come in, and Germans holding up the guy at gunpoint, just like, oh, welcome. And he speaks to him in German, saying, like, oh, there's a notice at the door. You might want to check on that. And the German opens up the thing and shows that signed by his commander, and that he is not to disturb this place of business. There's not to be any trouble here, and that the owner of the store, Vandal Savage, is to be listened to. So the soldiers are like, all right, we're out. So they leave, and then Sergeant Rock's like, you're a spy for the enemy? How dare you, sir? And Vandal's just like, dude, wars come and go. It's whatever. Like, I'm going to be comfortable for this brief period that it's happening here. And he's just like, war will affect everybody. It changes all these lives. And he's like, yeah, well, it only changes it so much as it is able to damage. And, like, it's not really something that's going to be able to damage me. So we're done here, Sergeant Rock. Why don't you go out there and do your thing? And Sergeant Rock just is like, all right, look, man, you're a civilian, so I'm not going to do anything. But if I ever see you again, Mr. Vandal Savage, you're history. To which point Vandal says, oh, I already am. So we then cut to now. We see the Illuminati stronghold where Vandal Savage is setting up his whatever plans. And he's being stopped by Animal Man and Alana Strange. And he's like, how did you find me? Like, I literally haven't done anything yet. I shouldn't have been able to be found at all. To which point Animal Man says, yeah, we got a guy who can find whoever we need, whenever we need, wherever in the universe. And he's like, what? And so they teleport out, and we see that they go to, I'm going to call it the Theta Beam space, the Zeta Beam space, because, like, sure, that's where we're basically at here. And we see Batgirl, Cliff Steele, Robot Man, John Henry Iron Steel, and then the normal people from the JLU are all in this space. And Vandal tries to stab Animal Man, but it doesn't work. And Animal Man's like, yeah, no, you can't hurt me here. To which point Steel points out that from what we can tell, everyone in this world is slightly out of sync with each other. So nobody can hurt each other, but, like, they can interact with the rocks in the setting and all that. And they look up into the Zeta Beam, and they see Adam Strange there, and Alana's communing with him right now, trying to get whatever answers. Courtney, Stargirl, just basically explains the whole things of there's these things breaking in around the world called breakers. They cause problems with physics, space, and time, stuff like that. And Adam is able to pick out the perfect team to be able to take them down. And this team of Batgirl, Vandal Savage, Robot Man, Steel, and Stargirl supervising are the perfect one to be able to take down whatever this current breaker is. So they all get teleported out to France, that same city of Aracourt, except now there is a bubble around it, and all of the wars that have ever passed through this city, which seemingly is all of them, World War I, II, future wars, past wars, any war in time at all, is now happening there simultaneously all the time. And they're like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is awful. Why is no one intervening? And it's like, oh, because the people who went into that bubble, they didn't come back out. So now it's on us to take care of. So Animal Man, Alana, and Equinox basically hold back, and they're like, yeah, all right, we're not chosen for this one. We're keeping an eye on you, though. Good luck. And the rest of the team just rolls in. So as they get in, they are immediately attacked by all these bomber ships, all this tanks and stuff like that. They're impressed by the technology that hasn't yet been invented, because future wars also pass through this area. There's an enemy tank, a tank, just in general, I think American, that doesn't recognize Batgirl or Robot Man. It tries to take a shot. Robot Man jumps in the way, saving Batgirl, tanks it, no pun intended, to the chest. And Stargirl's like, I don't know why they're firing at me. Could I look any more American? Jesus. So they make their way towards this farmhouse, a field in the middle, and it's like, okay, we have a technological edge on them. We can exploit that. We can take the higher ground. And Vandal Savage is like, don't count on that too much. It comes down to strategy. It comes down to resourcefulness. Also, sheer numbers. You got to keep an eye on that. And then all of a sudden, Batgirl grabs Stargirl, tells her to stop. She's about to step on a tripwire, to which point Batgirl says, you better let one of those metal men deal with this. And Robot Man's like, metal men are different people, but like, fair enough. I'll go ahead and set this thing off. To which point Steel's like, or we could avoid it. And he's like, no, because if we got to make our way past here again, we want it to be set off. And Vandal Savage is like, finally, someone here understands basic wisdom. And the moment that he sets it off, all of a sudden, 2 Gatling guns emerge from the ground, future tech, and they start firing some weird-ass bubbles at Robot Man. And it starts disrupting his electrical system. Steel comes in with his hammer. He analyzes it. It's some sort of gel with micro mines it's like a small EMPs, and he uses his hammer to find the frequency to shut it off. And so the gel falls apart, but Robot Man is EMP'd, so his brain's still functioning, but he needs to reboot. And so Steel just picks him up, throws him on his shoulders, and says, all right, I'll carry him around. We can proceed with that, though. And Vandal Savage is like, do you still feel smug in our superior force? And Steel's like, you literally were happy about him setting off the tripwire not 15 seconds ago. And Vandal Savage goes, yeah, with a stick or something. I didn't expect him to stand over it when he does it. That's on him. So they move deeper into the town through the farmland. We see they're watching all of these battles, these wars throughout time happen, but all of the soldiers seem to be interacting just within their own slice of time. Even if there's an enemy, like a German from World War II against a American or British force from World War I, they don't see each other. They don't fight each other. But they are all still trying to fight in a certain direction, to which point they're like, well, if they're using war as essentially a cocoon, we need to get to the center of it. So they start trying to push past the enemy lines, and Batgirl and Steel like jump over it. Stargirl tries flying up, but as she flies up, she's immediately attacked by, I'm gonna go ahead and say, the Red Baron. It may be a superhero, but he's got like the crosses on the ship and stuff like that. I think it's the Red Baron. However, he's like, wait a minute, was that a woman? Oh, God, maybe I could save her. So he swoops down in the airship, grabs hold of her, and starts flying away as she's unconscious. And they're like, whoa, God, they grabbed Stargirl. We got to go after her. We got to do something. And Vandal's like, no, you can't split us up. Sheer numbers. Remember, that's important. And then he gets a bash to the back of the head by a rifle butt. And wouldn't you know it, it's Sergeant Rock in the Easy Company, and he says, Savage, I told you if I saw you again that you'd be history. Let's go. So that's the issue. No, I'm down with it. It's a quirky as hell story. It explains it well enough. A little bubble of time is breaking down, and all this war is being coalesced into one central bubble for the purpose of protecting whatever this breaker is. So no, even the intro bit of setting up that like Vandal was in this city beforehand, I think that could lend to a lot of interesting stuff if he does stumble across himself. So no, I think it does a good job of setting up. The only thing that's a little bit shaky right now is why specifically this group of people, but I'm sure that'll be explained as we wrap it up. So no, it's honestly, I'm much more impressed with this arc than I was the first one. The first one felt like it was biting off more than it could chew. This one feels just like a good time, and I'm happy to go along with it. So I'm going to say this one is, I'll say it's an 8. I think it gets up to the 8 level. It's close to a 7.5, but I think it squeaks just barely above it. So hopefully we can stick a landing, because I think next issue might actually be the last issue. I could be wrong on that, but we're getting close to the end of the series at the very least. Batman Superman number 24, written by Greg Pak, art by Ardian Syaf, Yildiray Cinar, and Howard Porter. So last issue, we showed that the underground people, whatever their official name was, turns out they have partnered up with Aquaman because, sure, why not? He's kind of in that area right now. So we open up this issue with a slight cut forward. Superman's on the back of some sea dragon or something and gets punched in the chest by Aquaman. And he's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not sure this is going to work out for me. And then we cut back. We say 10 minutes earlier, we see that the platform that the artificial sun has been brought out to, it's not working out. They've brought the sun. They're losing control of it. Lucius is like, give me some time. We can stabilize it. Batman, you just got to chill. And Gordon Batman's just like, you better hurry up, man. It's too dangerous. We got to do something. So we see that a bunch of dolphins are jumping out of the water and they get hit by a wayward solar beam and end up being killed. So we go back to the subterranean army. Superman's still posing as one of their own, and he's climbing up onto the head of the sea beast in order to try to catch up with where Aquaman is on a much further up one. And all the guys are like, what are you doing, man? We're all going to get there at the same time. And he's just like, he's on the phone with Batman, and Batman's like, are you good, Superman? Where's the army? And he's like, I'm working on it. Just chill, okay? There's civilians here. I have to play my cards carefully. So he jumps onto the one with Aquaman, and he's like, Arthur, you got to stop all this. And Arthur looks over at some dead dolphins in the water, and he's like, my God, these idiots. They poisoned everything. And Superman's like, no, wait, you don't understand. And they look off in the distance. They see the solar energy or whatever. And they're like, there they are. Let's take them down. And Superman puts a hand on Aquaman's shoulder. And it's like, you don't understand. They're trying to stop it. It's unstable. And Arthur throws a punch backward, like, how dare you lay a hand on me? Who do you think you are? And finally unveils, and he's like, hi, it's me, Arthur. It's Clark. What's up? How's it going? Can we talk? And he's just like, oh, Superman, gee, I thought you lost your powers. What are you doing out here? He's like, well, I mean, it's mostly true. I did mostly lose my powers. And then Uxer, whatever his name is, hears that and is like, oh, you lost your powers? That's great. I can totally kill you now. And Superman's like, dude, I know you hate me, but I'm trying to help you out. And he's like, I've had enough of your help. So he's about to attack Superman, but Aquaman stops him, being like, hey, look, we don't have time for this. I'll take care of Superman. You go get the sun. We got to deal with that. And Superman's like, are you kidding me? Can anybody listen to the fact that it's unstable, please? And then Aquaman just punches him square in the jaw, sends him flying 50 feet out into the ocean. And he's like, okay, so, Aquaman is ridiculously stronger than me right now, and that hurt. That really, really was painful. But Uker is just like, all right, cool, yeah, on to the sun, everybody. So Aquaman swims over, starts fighting with Superman some more, and he's just like, Aquaman, you gotta listen. He's like, I am listening. Look, you couldn't even stand one punch from me there, buddy. You're not going to be able to take on this army. I'm giving you an out. We're going to sell this, and you're going to get out of here, and you're going to get yourself safe and try to find some other way to stop this than just stop the army from getting there, okay? And so they continue the fight or whatever, and Batman's still on the thing. He sees the sea serpents approaching, and he's on the phone with Superman. Superman's like, oh, they're still coming, man. You got to figure out how to stop them. And he's like, it's all right. Do what Aquaman says. Take the fall. I can fight these things. I'm Batman. And Superman's like, okay, that's something Batman would actually say. But when he says it, I know he has a plan that's going to work. I don't think that Gordon has any plan that's going to work. And then Gordon just sends some missiles out. That's his whole thing. He's firing them against these sea serpents. And Uker just blasts right through it. Superman's like, yeah, no, this guy doesn't have any strategy. This is not going to end well. So Arthur is still throwing punches at Superman because he's refusing to back down, regardless of being told to just throw the fight. He's refusing to back down. And he taunts Arthur by even at being a quarter powered or whatever I'm at, you still can't beat me, Arthur. Is that really the best you can do? And Arthur punches him again, but he gives him just enough of trajectory to land up on the oil drill platform, to which Arthur's like, damn it, I got played. So Uker gets up to the artificial sun. He's about to take it when then all of a sudden the errant beam comes out. It's about to kill Uker, and Superman pushes him out of the way. And Uker's like, you saved me, what? And he's like, yeah, that's what I do. Can you please listen to me now? And turns out that their plan here, which none of this was set up, but their plan here was, now they've got it strapped to some rocket engines, and they're basically just going to put it up in the low atmosphere so it doesn't kill everybody. The automatic guidance is not working, so he's got to fly it manual. Sure. And so Batman gets onto the satellite and he's flying up with it. Clark somehow also gets on there, and Batman's like, what are you doing? You're mortal. You'll get killed. And he's like, so are you. Like, we're going to do this together. That's Superman and Batman. And so they get up. Clark calls him out like, you did have a plan. This was a plan all along. And he's like, yes, of course it was. Now, please get off of this thing. And he's like, well, hold on. It's a sun. Maybe, just maybe, if I get hit by it, I might actually get more powerful. And then he gets blasted and... no, it just hurts him. So at that point, there is some gunfire from a nearby ship that I guess belongs to the subterranean people. Don't know how that one works out. They grab hold of the artificial sun, blast off the rockets so that it's just the crate now. And that causes Batman and Superman to plummet down towards the ocean. And we see that the subterranean people are working with Dawn Command. They're the ones who have the ship. And then Dawn Command says, okay, bye. And they just teleport away, along with all the Dawn Command soldiers. And the civilians come up to Uker like, hey, man, what just happened? Did they just steal our son? Did you just get played? And Uker's like, oh, God, I did just get played. This sucks. And the people are like, but the subterranean needs that energy. And in steps Lucius Fox like, hi, I work for Wayne Tech. Maybe we could be of assistance. And Uker's like, no, we don't need any surface help. This is stupid. No, you're stupid. And then Aquaman steps in being like, Uker, you got played, man. It's time to back down. Like, Batman was working with them. They were trying to help you. You got to just take a moment and listen now. So we see Uker shakes hands with Lucius Fox, and Batman's like, Superman, if you hadn't jumped onto that platform, and he's like, yeah, you would have been incinerated. You're welcome. He's like, no, if you hadn't jumped onto that platform, they wouldn't have been able to get the artificial sun. Like, that's now that it is in the hands of the enemy. This is an inherently bad thing. And Superman's like, yeah, but we're both alive, and now we can track down how they have it. And Gordon's just like, that's not the point. You've made things inherently worse, like, for everybody. Maybe back in the day that kind of devil may care attitude worked for the other Batman because you had the power set to back up your stuff, but like, we don't have that anymore. You are being irresponsible. I don't want you anywhere near my city. Get the hell out of Gotham. And Superman's just like, okay. So he just turns around and leaves. But then we get, honestly, a scene that doesn't make much sense. So, at the very beginning of this series, the whole thing was back before Superman and Batman knew each other. Clark and Bruce met up in a park, and it was all done by Jay Lee. This is not done by Jay Lee. This is done by, I believe, Ardian Syaf. But Clark goes to the same park, and he meets up with amnesiac Bruce. And amnesiac Bruce says, I'm sorry, do I know you? As if Clark Kent hasn't been Superman all over the news the whole time. But regardless, he's like, yeah, I'm Clark Kent. I once interviewed you before. And the scene plays out kind of as it did in the book, where there's some kids playing ball, and whereas Superman intervened and then was chastised by Bruce, saying like, oh, these boys, they just need to learn on their own or whatever. Now the role has switched, and Bruce comes in as these kids are fighting, and he's trying to step in. He's trying to show them that it's, play nice, pretty much. And Clark's like, huh, you really have changed. And Bruce is like, what? And he's like, nothing, but like, you always seemed like a man with a bigger mission than this, Mr. Wayne. Did you ever think maybe you get back in the fight or something like that? And Bruce is basically like, I don't have a story for you. Whatever you're looking for, go out, get it somewhere else. And he yells back over to the kids and gets them to stop fighting. And then Clark walks off satisfied, and he's like, all right, well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Wayne. And he goes off. And then finally we get Dawn Command arriving in Alabama, of all places, where we see a figure comes down and meets up with Wrath, who, if you don't know who Wrath is, she was in this week's issue of Action Comics and was just introduced there. So we're setting things up across Greg Pak's books. And we see this figure comes up and says, oh, did you break the souls of all the good men yet? And Wrath is like, did you steal the sun? And we see that this person is Vandal Savage, who says, of course I did. I'm goddamn Vandal Savage. Let's take over the world. And that's the issue. So it's 3 parts. It's the main story, which wraps up on its own, and like, that's fine. It's okay. It maybe is a little bit rushed. It's not inherently awful of a wrap-up or anything like that. I like that Gordon basically calls him out and says, like, look, Batman Superman as a book is done. Like, go off and do something else with other Bat family members for a while if that's really what you want to do here. And as far as I could tell, that's kind of what he does. In terms of the bit in the park, that felt, I don't want to say forced, but it felt weird. It felt like that's something you do for the final issue of the book to bring it back to number 1. Doing it here just feels kind of strange, especially because I think it was like issue 6 of the book also brought it back to the park and played it off in that slightly different way. So I don't know. It was a little bit strange to have that there. And then third, the setup of Vandal Savage and Wrath, which, again, Wrath was introduced this week. There has been no other mention of Wrath anywhere else. The fact that it is being treated as like this villain of like, oh yes, everyone knows what Wrath is up to. It's like, yeah, do they? Do they though? Yeah, it's kind of just a jumbled mess by the time you get done with it. So I think I like the Aquaman bit. I like him being around and he like is like, oh yeah, no, fellow Justice Leaguer, I'm willing to help out where I can. Beyond that, it's just kind of for me. So I think I'm going to say this one is a 6.5. It's art-wise, it's fine. Art-wise, it's even good. It's just collectively, this issue had too much going on writing-wise, and it was just a bit too overstuffed and rushed in the wrong places. New Suicide Squad number 12, written by Sean Ryan, art by Philippe Briones. So last issue we had Harley, Reverse Flash, and Parasite try to go in and correct the mission, and boy, did they just fail. So we open up with Reverse Flash running through the desert. He keeps stumbling, getting up, stumbling some more. He's just trying to get away as fast as he can. Parasite is being experimented on, and the scientists are like, so what's this guy's story? What does he do? And they're like, he takes in energy and can use its power or whatever. And they're like, cool. Can we like turn that into body armor or something? And it's like, yeah, we're working on it. It's like, what about the clown girl? It's like, clown girl's useless. We just put her in a prison cell. We're not even going to bother with her. We put her somewhere where she's not going to be a problem. And we see that she's been put in a cell with all of the unruly children, and she's chastising them for smelling like dead farts. And they don't respond. Like, either because they're selectively mute or they don't understand her language. And as she's trying to tell them, like, no, seriously, like farts, you all smell disgusting, they just don't get it until finally she puts her hands up and makes a fart noise. And all the kids start laughing. And so she does it again, and they laugh some more. And she's like, huh, okay, all right, I'm good with me being able to make kids laugh. So we cut over to Black Manta being walked through by Saladin, the leader, and he's just like, man, this place is awesome. I really, really like what you're doing here, because like every other time that I go to a place that offers up order and like, structure, they always disappoint. And he's like, yeah, that's implicit to like every other organization, because they're all driven by things like money and power and stuff like that. Like, we are so pure in what we want to do, and that's why we're going to be able to change the world with it. And he's like, hey, let me show you something. I got something really cool over here. And he basically shows him the super weapon and says, this is our time bomb. To which point Black Manta says, that sounds like a thing that already exists. And he's like, da. This is a bomb that when it explodes, anything that's caught in it will be sent through time. And they're like, oh, okay. So the plan is, make a whole bunch of these and you can literally send the enemy back to the Stone Age. But tis. We cut back to Reverse Flash. He's once again stumbling. He gets a call from Waller over the comms, and he tries answering, but they can't hear him. So at that point, we see Waller's talking with, I think it's Louise, Bonnie's her name, and Vic Sage. And just like, all right, so we can't get anybody on the comms. Like, what do we do? And Vic's just like, do we blow up the neck bombs? Do we just call it there and say, oh, well, this is exactly why they're built? And Waller's like, no, we can't. That'll reveal that, like, we were a part of this. It'll expose the whole operation. Moving forward, we need to have somebody in there watching them all the time, so that way it'll be easier to report into that central thing rather than trying to get it around the world. To which point Vic says, I think I've got just the person. And Waller says, yeah, me too. I just have to go track him down. So I think we're going to get a Rick Flag moment here. But regardless, we see back in the kid's cell, she's still making the kids laugh. She like takes her bows or whatever. And she's like, what did you kids do to get thrown in here to begin with? And they just get like smarmy little grins and just like, oh, okay, you're smart, fair enough. But how about this? You guys want to have some real fun? How about we get out of here? And all the kids just nod. And she's like, fantastic. I got a plan. So we cut back to Manta arriving back in the apartment with Deadshot there. And Deadshot's like, where have you been, man? What's going on? It's like, I was talking with Saladin. He showed me the super weapon. It's amazing. And Deadshot's like, that's fantastic. Awesome. Let's destroy it and get out of here. And he's like, no, I like it here. And Deadshot's like, oh, God, see, I knew it. I knew that you were too into this place. And Manta's just like, don't you see how important this is? And she's just like, no. And it's like, look, they're talking about restarting the world. It's not going to have any of the nonsense. And he goes on this rant about how individuality is like the worst crime that anything could have because it distracts from like the larger purpose of like, being able to take care of the world or whatever. And Deadshot calls him out saying like, so you're helping them because you hate Snapchat? Newsflash, we all hate Snapchat. And he's like, no, you're missing the point that your kind couldn't possibly understand. And he's just like, no, I get what you're saying. I understand. But like, what happened to the Manta from the last arc who wanted to be part of the team? And like, that was the most important thing. And he just gets all pissy. He's just like, Waller lied to me. I don't want to be part of the team anymore. And these people are right. And Deadshot's like, no, they're not right. Nobody is right. Everybody's just grasping at straws, and you are so desperate to be part of something larger, to have some sort of higher purpose, that you will do anything for anyone who offers that up to you. There's no great answer. There's no righteous way. This is all just bullshit. And Mansa's like, nah. And Deadshot's like, all right, whatever, bye. And so he walks out. We then go back to the Reverse Flash, who's still trying to get on the comms with them. He's just like, hello, hi, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And back at the base, they don't turn off the mic. And Waller's like, yeah, no, still no connection. We can't get with Reverse Flash. And they're just like, yeah, I mean, what were we thinking? This entire time he's been on the team, he was injured and then like he couldn't keep up. Like, Reverse Flash is such a loser. What a complete waste of our time. And you just see him frowning and getting sad as he tries to run like further, trying to get on the comms. So we get another scene with Deadshot. He's talking to a kid in the town. Kid's not talking. He's just sitting there quietly listening. And Deadshot's like, I got a kid your age. I got a daughter. I could just leave all this. I could just bail out. I could go back to her. But like, if I did that right now, what would she think? What would she think of her dad if I actually went and did that? And the kid just stares at him and he's like, all right, fine. But like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to kill Boomerang for having to save his life. So we see all the kids in the cell are shouting, playing around. Guard comes in, tells them to shut up. And then Harley just drops down from the ceiling, steals this guy's sword, slashes it in the back, cuts off his hand, and starts laughing maniacally as she starts cutting him to ribbons. And as he's completely dismembered down on the ground, Harley looks over at the kids who are horrified, rightly so. And she's just like, what's the matter? What did I do? And finally, we get one last page where Black Manta goes and visits Saladin and says, Master Saladin, I need to tell you, I was sent here on a Black Ops mission. Part of Task Force asks to infiltrate and destroy you. Can you ever forgive me? And Saladin just gives a knowing smile. And that's the issue. I like it. I think it's good. I think a lot of these issues read very quickly. And it's because they're so focused on like the action aspect of it. But what I appreciate about this one is that pretty much all of the characters are kept separate. All of them are doing their own thing. Yes, there's some overlap. We see some characters together, but like they're each doing their own thing. But everything is so boiled down into a very specific right here, right now sort of moment that it's not too complicated to keep track of all the different moving parts. Harley's stuck in a cell. Her idea is escape. You know everything that's going on in her plot now. Black Manta is all in on this cause. You know everything about his plot now. Deadshot is still determined to carry out the mission, even if he's reluctant to do so because he doesn't care that much. You know everything about that now. Like, all of this stuff works so well. And the Reverse Flash also just good way to flesh out the character of the crime of not having fleshed him out over the previous arc and the rest of this one. You're basically coming in and saying, like, this guy kind of sucks. Maybe that's his thing. And then Reverse Flash has to, like, own up to that and probably overcome it, but that hasn't happened yet. So, no, I really like this one. The only thing I'll criticize a little bit is the page where they're basically saying, we need to have someone in the field with them that we can trust that's not a criminal. I know just the guy. That came off as a bit clunky. It just was. Not much can be said about it. If you got to set it up, you got to set it up. It just came off as weird. So I think I'd say this is probably a 7.5 for me. It's a very good issue. I like the pacing of it. And yeah, it's just, I don't feel like we made a whole lot of progress from the last issue, but it adds so much to each of the individual characters that I kind of don't care. It's just its own thing. Catwoman number 44, written by Genevieve Valentine, art by David Messina. So, last issue we had Echo, dressed as Catwoman, was thrown off a roof, beaten, and grabbed by Killer Croc. This issue picks up with Selina, also now dressed as Catwoman. She comes down and goes into Croc's lair, and he's just got Echo laying in a bed, covered in bandages, recovering. And we get that Croc has tended to her. She has some broken bones or whatever. And Selina very quickly puts together, this must be because of Black Mask. Like, he must have been the one who did all this. So what happened? How did all this happen? And Croc says, yeah, I found her in this spot, whatever like that. So Selina understands that it was because she was caught as Catwoman coming towards Selina's place. Black Mask saw her there and therefore went and attacked, and she couldn't let down the charade. She had to pretend that that was her. Croc kind of chews her out, saying, like, she shouldn't have defended you. Like, this was not something she should have done. Like, this is entirely on you, and you should have been the one to go down. And then Echo wakes up and just like, all right, stop fighting. I'm awake. So Selina basically says, look, please stop being Catwoman. It isn't safe. And she's like, yeah, well, it wasn't safe before either. I'm going to keep doing it. And she requests for Croc to bring her back to her family's penthouse, the Hasegawa clan. And Croc is like, yeah, absolutely. The only way to get you in is through the roof. So we'll go up that way. And Catwoman is about to say something else, and Echo's like, I know, I'll be careful. And she's like, no, I wasn't going to say that, but she's already gone. So we see Croc drops Echo, dressed as Catwoman, back up through the penthouse skylight, and there's a camera recording it, and turns out that Black Mask sees that Catwoman has gotten shelter in the Hasegawa house. So Eiko's dad comes back and says, oh, I didn't realize you were home. You covered in bandages. What's up? And she's like, oh, I was just training too hard. No big deal. And she's like, all right, well, sleep well. So Croc and Selina have just a little bit more of a talk, and it basically boils down to Selina saying, hey, look, I recognize that this was all messed up. I am sorry that this was put into the situation, but I'm done, okay? I'm gonna get out of this while I still can. And he's like, it's too late for while I still can. Like, no matter what, you're gonna lose someone. Someone's gonna get hurt. And she recognizes that. So we see a few days pass. Eiko is training Stephanie some more and just kind of needling her, giving her some, like, extra points every time she throws a punch. And Stephanie's like, I know, I get it, okay. And then finally she explodes, and it's just like, you know what? Why are you the one teaching me if you failed so hardcore like 3 nights ago? And she's like, okay, that was out of line. I'm sorry. And she's like, yeah, I was. I'm going to punch you once I feel better. So they have a little chat, and Stephanie thinks that Catwoman is the one who did this, and it's like, no, she wasn't. Just don't get involved, okay? And it's like, all right, fair enough. And as she gets out of the building, immediately she comes across Selina in Catwoman gear, and it's like, oh god, what do you want? She's like, I want your help. So Selina's got this thing about the guy who was investigating Batman who ended up dead. She basically passes the file off to Steph and says, hey, this is the whole reason you found me before. I want you to take this file and go solve this guy's murder. And she's just like, okay, it was, why me? Like, you ditched me before and now you're deputizing me. And Catwoman's like, look, you can easily say no, but I know you won't. So take the file and do your thing. So at this point, we get Antonia and Ward are meeting up with Selina inside a restaurant. Antonia says, yes, I made a deal with Penguin to kill Selina. That was why I was on the roof the other night. I saw her there and I was going to see if I could go through with it, but like I didn't. And Bard doesn't know any of this. Sorry, Ward, not Bard. Ward doesn't know any of this and is like, okay, well, what did you make a deal with Penguin for? And she's like, nothing, don't worry about it. So they go into this place and immediately Selina's like, okay, you saw Penguin, you went to go see him for yourself? And she's like, yes, it was the best choice I had for our family. It's what I had to do. And she's like, cool, what did he want? Did he want you to kill just me or me and Ward? And she's like, oh, I want you to know I would never kill you. Like, that's the whole reason I'm telling you now. And she's like, look, Antonia, I've been going to see Penguin for months. Like, we've already had this thing. The fact that he thought we could sneak around and he could make a deal behind my back, I need to go have a word with him. But like, now you know what they would have asked for you to be able to take control of this family. And Ward is shocked that like she was on the roof theoretically to try to kill Selina, and she's just like, look, but I respect it, you didn't do it, and you were willing to do it all for the family, so fair enough. You know I'm Catwoman now, cat's out of the bag, everyone knows all that stuff. However, what stopped you from shooting that night? And she's like, look, you've done some stuff that I haven't forgiven you for, and I don't know if I can, but I'm done trying to kill family. And she's like, awesome, that's all I needed to hear. I want you to lead the family. And she's like, what? And Ward's like, excuse me, what's going on here? And she's like, yeah, look, I'm the one in charge. I'm the one who can say what happens here. We're going to do a slow transition of power. I've done all I can do. I've made as much peace as I can between the families. This is the level we're at now. The people who are left kind of just hate me. So maybe if I'm not in charge anymore and I leave it up to someone else who is a bit more intensely associated with this stuff, they'll take to it. And she's like, and this has nothing to do with being Catwoman. It's like, no, it has everything to do with Catwoman. That's where I view my home as. All this other stuff going on, like, I'm glad to have you guys in my family, but the book's title is Catwoman. And it's like, all right, fair enough. So Selina agrees she's going to stick around for a little while. She's not going to just immediately relinquish all of her powers, but it is going to be a transition coming up pretty soon. So last thing we get here is Eiko. She's out on the town. She's going off, I think, trying to find Selina. When she gets to the penthouse, she sees nobody's there. So it's like, all right, fair enough. She gets back in the car. Meanwhile, at the Hasegawa penthouse, Black Mask is done with the Hasegawas. He breaks in with his men. There's a huge gunfight. Eiko's father comes in. They start shooting at each other. Eventually, Black Mask lands the killing blow. And as the father is bleeding out on the ground, Black Mask comes up and he's like, I actually thought we were partners. I thought we were cool. But you were harboring Catwoman. You were on the side of Selina Kyle. And it's like, what? No, I wasn't. And he's like, don't lie to me. And he pulls out a surveillance footage photo showing Eiko in the gear being let into the house, and is just like, I nearly killed her and you offer her sanctuary? What other explanation is there? And immediately the dad gets it. Everything snaps into place. He just mutters to himself, oh, Eiko. And he looks up at Black Mask and says, nope, that's what it is. You figured it out. You got me. And Black Mask is like, it's just business. Hope you understand. And he pulls the trigger, and we see Eiko gets home to absolute bloodshed, and she ends up finding her father with a note written on the wall saying, play with the cat, you get scratched. And she holds her dead body of her father in her hands as the sun either rises or sets, hard to tell. And yeah, that's the issue. So honestly, I did a horrible job of explaining it because there's a lot going on there, but I think out of all the issues, I've enjoyed this one the most because it was just so clear cut. Like, you see Selina is making the decision. You see her coming to terms of like, I can't keep doing this. I'm getting out. She wraps up the threads with the detective investigating Batman thing and his whole murder, passes that off to Steph. Maybe we'll get more drops on that, but for the most part, that's over there. We get Catwoman, she's taking on the full mantle. She wants Eiko out of it, but of course, she can't quite get there yet, and then she's passing off the family. But we get that Croc thing at the beginning saying someone's still going to get hurt, even if you get out now. And then we see, of course it did. Of course, Eiko was the one who had to suffer for all that. So it adds some cool character dynamics. How is Eiko going to feel about all this now that Catwoman is officially to blame for her father's death? And she was still committed to family regardless. It's got a lot going for it. I really do appreciate it. So I think I'm going to say that this one is... I'm going to say this one is an 8. It's barely an 8. It's just scratching that level for me, but I really did enjoy this one a bit more than I think almost any other issue we've had so far, just on a sheerly understanding level. It wasn't something where I was second guessing myself or having to remember characters. Everything was pretty locked into place, and I'm very happy about that. Starfire number 4, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Emanuela Lupacchino and Mirco Pierfederici. I believe that's correct. So last issue, we had a giant monster started attacking town, and it turns out that one of the waitresses is actually a superhero in disguise named Atli. And she's able to control earth or ground or something like that. So we pick up this issue with... Stella, the sheriff, is telling everybody, all right, fire, take down the monster, do what you can. But then Starfire comes in and says, hey, no, shooting the monster makes it bigger. You got to back off. Everyone just leave this up to us. So Atli is using her earth control powers to keep the monster contained while everyone is evacuating, getting out of the area, and they talk about it and say like, yeah, I thought I had him contained in an iron ball, an impenetrable iron ball deep beneath the earth, but clearly that didn't work out too well. Also, what's your name? And Starfire's like, oh, you can call me Corey. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing here. So she asks if they have any more iron balls, and Atli's like, no, sorry, don't. In terms of weaknesses, he has extreme light weaknesses, but it doesn't like incapacitate him. And Corey asks, well, can he swim? And she's like, you know what? I'm not sure, but I do have an idea. So she asks about Corey's relative like strength levels, and she's like, I mean, like kind of, Superman is not that far off from me. And she's like, fair enough. I'm going to need you to fly 5 miles out into the ocean. And then I'm going to hurl him in your direction. You catch him and go another 56 miles out west, and you keep on blasting him. Do not let up. Get him as big as humanly possible. And Starfire's like, so you want him to get bigger? It's like, yep, that's the plan. And heavier. Wink, wink. Get it? We're going over the ocean, and he's going to be really heavy. And Starfire's like, yeah, okay, I gotcha. So we see Atli... The monster starts like breaking through all the rock she had him under. She causes a whole bunch more to come up, and she's like, hey, look, if you promise to go back where you came from, I'm not going to annihilate you. And he's like, oh, my master ordered your death. And it turns out from Atli's culture, which we'll get to, this monster comes from someone that she was supposed to be in an arranged marriage with, and she refused it. And that's why she's like, oh no, I'm never going to be able to do that. Can you imagine being married for politics rather than for love? Like, what if you met your true love and you were not available at the time? Oh god, that would be awful. And Starfire's like, oh my god, I can't believe it. I'm you're riveting story here. And she's like, didn't I tell you to go out into the ocean? And she's like, right, yeah, no, totally doing it now. Just had to react. So the monster tries to like attack her a little bit more, saying how she's going to rip her head from her body. And she's just like, all right, just remember, I tried to give you a choice here. So she says, like, look, in your next life, tell your king if he sends another assassin, I'm going to destroy his entire kingdom. And she makes a giant rock fist, throws the monster deep out into the ocean, and then goes talk to Stella. And Stella's like, so what's your origin story? You want to tell me what's going on? And she's like, all right, here's the short version. There is an underground world called Strata, and it is very technologically advanced, and turns out that because of some weird rare metal called Quixium. Some of the Stratons get superpowers, including her. She can manipulate rocks, and so she also looks the most human. She's sent up onto the surface world to try to help humanity to get to a point where they can live in harmony with nature, because turns out that despite being an underground world, humanity's really good at messing up the environment to a point where it would even impact them. And she worked with Power Girl for a while up on the surface, and then they went their own separate ways. She became a waitress down in Florida, and frankly didn't really do much of anything for a while there. Just had a job and a small group of friends until eventually this happened today. And Stella's like, okay, well, we're going to have a chat about all that, but what's going on with the creature? So we cut over to Starfire, who has caught the creature, is dragging him across the surface of the ocean, just blasting him with star bolts the whole time. And when she finally reaches the point where she's supposed to stop, she keeps on blasting him over and over down into the water. He grows and grows, like triples, quadruples in size. And as he starts to sink down, he grabs hold of Starfire. And she's like, oh God, can't breathe, sunlight disappearing, I don't have a choice. So she blasts with her energy off his hand, his finger specifically, until he lets her go. And he drops down into an ocean chasm and sinks for seemingly all of eternity. And so she flies back to the rest of the town, and Atlee's back into her civilian gear, and just like, so, like, is he gonna die? Is that what did we just kill this guy? And she's like, no. His species doesn't die per se. They just get old and naturally become rock. So he's just gonna become dormant and hibernate down there. It's no big deal. So at that point, Starfire's like, oh, that's great. And also, I love having a new superpowered friend, and I would love to hear more about you. I have a swimming pool. Would you like to come over? And she's like, absolutely. Pool party. That sounds fantastic. And Stella's just like, hold on, stop, wait. This team up needs to end, okay? Like, it has been 72 hours since this book began, and I have had an alien come to my town, a hurricane I've had to deal with, a boat full of dead people, and now this monster showing up. I haven't had a chance to freak out yet. But Atlee and Starfire are just like, so yeah, at the pool party, I got this bathing suit, and I think that it'd be really cool to wear. And she's like, no, are you listening to my freak out or not? And Starfire's like, are you mad with us? And she just lets out a yell, to which Starfire and Atlee come over and do a group hug. And she's like, no, all right, whatever. Like, we are talking about this after my shift is done. And for the love of God, Starfire, buy a bathing suit. So we cut over to this beach parking lot, and this man comes up and asks when the beach closes to this random, I believe, guy. It's hard to tell. He's got a long ponytail. And then all of a sudden his eyes glow and his speech bubble goes all weird, and it seems like he's mind controlling this guy to get in the van and do everything that he says, as if he was this person's major back in the military. So we then go over to the pool party, where apparently Stella is under the water having a tantrum. She's just throwing punches, and Starfire and Atlee are watching on like, this is weird. Should we, like, it's been 2 minutes. Should we go down and get her? What's up? The brother who's there, who I can never remember the name of, but we'll get to it. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. This is just something she does whenever she gets pissed off. So she comes back up and she's like, all right, fine. I feel better. But like, is this just the thing? Like, so superhero shows up, Starfire shows up in town, and then monsters come to follow? Is this something I need to get used to? And Atlee's like, no, the monster was here for me, and I've been in town for 2 years. Like, this has nothing to do with Starfire. You don't need to worry about that. Plus, Starfire helped me get rid of the monster. And so I was like, all right, fine, fair enough, but like, can you guys please try to keep a low profile? To which Atlee's like, have you seen Starfire? The answer is clearly no, but you know, it's part of the world, and part of what I love about your guys' world up here is that, like, y'all just kind of get along with each other. To which Stella's like, I'm sorry, have you ever watched the news? And she's like, yes, the news says everyone's angry at each other, but frankly, I haven't seen that in my little slice of the world, so I choose to say it doesn't exist. So they talk about the tiki party coming up. Atlee's now invited, and that's that. So then we cut to the planet Tamaran, where an assassin that we don't get the name of is breaking his way into the temple. He kills a guard. until finally he makes his way into the, I don't know, main throne room, whatever, one of the bedrooms, and he's talking to this shadowy figure. It's Blackfire, but pretend like you don't know that. And she's like, oh, I've gotten all of this information as to where Starfire could have ended up, but I don't know where specifically. I will need you to go and hunt her down as a bounty hunter. Here's half your money, half of it when you end up getting the information, but do not kill her. That is very important. Don't do that. So we then cut over to Starfire, who's taking one of her outdoor showers with Soul, the brother, nearby. She's having trouble getting it turned on. He turns on the pump, and then she starts stripping, and he's like, oh, Jesus, you don't know what you're doing to me. And she's like, what am I doing to you? He's like, all right, well, maybe you don't know what you're doing to me, but like, Jesus. So he says he's got to head off. He's going to catch her later. We see and also mentions that she has a job interview tomorrow that she cannot be late for. It's important that she makes it there. But we cut to later on that day where she makes her way into town. She goes to a cheesesteak place, orders one, when all of a sudden she gets flagged over by Boone, who I think was the kid from the last place she was staying, and Boone's girlfriend, Vita. And Starfire's like, hey, I read up on your culture. I realized that you are a monogamous people. I'm sorry for kissing your boyfriend. To which point, Vita's like, I'm sorry, you did what? And so as she's eating her cheesesteak, Vita's basically just chewing out Boone, and Boone's like, she's an alien. It's how she gets language. It's not a big deal, honey. And Vita's like, well, then why didn't you mention it, you dick? And so she storms off, calls him an ass clown, and Boone's like, all right, well, I gotta go deal with that. Thanks, Starfire. And she's like, no problem. And then in walks the murderous mind control-y guy from the earlier scene, who sees Starfire, has 2 beers in hands, and says, hey, mind if I join you? My name's Soren. To which he says, hi, yes, come on in. So, yeah, that's that sequence. It's fine. It's a good issue. It's I wouldn't say the best that this series has offered yet. I feel like I've gotten more out of previous issues, but like, I don't know. It's just kind of more of the same. It's more of what I expect from this series, and it's not bad. That's the thing, is that it's actually quite capable at what it's doing. I don't know. I found this along a lot of the Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti books, which is to say Harley Quinn, but also a couple other ones, is that they really enjoy having a very large cast. They like having a huge cast of characters that we can bounce between, and we just keep adding more, and some will rotate in, some will rotate out, but we just keep on having them interact with these new characters. And that's fine, but I do hazard the caution here where it is sometimes you get characters that you are actually interested in and they just don't end up coming back, and you feel a bit disappointed by that. The idea that we have Atlee here, I'm not saying we're going to lose Atlee, but like, we've had so many characters introduced over the course of this book that when Boone showed up, I forgot Boone, like who he was. I had to go back and say like, oh yeah, right, he was in this earlier part. So I'm just worried that eventually we're going to get to a critical mass on this, and it's going to be like too many characters, not enough definition for any of them, and the ones that I do like aren't actually showing up anymore. But this issue's fine. It just seems like it's moving in that direction. So I'm going to say this is a 7. Pretty good. Not great, not awful, just 7, and move on from there. Red Hood and Arsenal number 4, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Dennis Medry. So last issue, we meant that there was a villain named Underbelly. He apparently exists in every major city. And then the teaser at the end is, whoopsie, we're going to Gotham. So this issue picks up in Gotham, where Jim Gordon Batman has pinned down Arsenal and Red Hood. He's got his little heads-up display showing that they're both wanted. And he's like, oh, well, you guys have a huge rap sheet, so let me just say you're under arrest in general, and we'll go on from there. And of course, Red Hood and Arsenal start firing at him. It's bouncing off the rookie armor, and Arsenal's chewing out Red Hood like, oh yeah, hey, let's come out to Gotham. We'll have a few bites. We'll have a few laughs. This is a bad idea, Jason. And Jason's like, what can I say? The town's gone to crap since I left. But we cut back a few hours earlier where they're sitting in a diner, and Arsenal's like, wait a minute, hold on. Batman died? Like, we had the entire trip out here to Gotham, and you didn't think to tell me right until this point that Batman died? And Jason's like, look, first off, it was big news. I don't know how you missed it. You spend too much time not on news sites. Secondarily, I don't think he's dead. Take it as someone who came back from the dead. I don't think this is really going to be one that sticks. And Arsenal's like, are you sure? Like, you could talk. I know you guys were, complicated, but close. And he's like, nah, I'm good. Don't worry about it. Anyway, let's talk about this underbelly thing. Long story short, I think that Underbelly began in Gotham City because Gotham City is just that much of a horrible, crime-ridden hellhole. So let's find out exactly where he was at. And Arsenal's like, cool. By the way, I have this idea for a new Arrow thing. And Jason's like, I don't care. Don't explain it. Just go off and make your thing. And he's like, cool. I'll find you in a couple hours. So Jason knows he's lying. We'll get to that. But the waitress who is waiting on Jason knows him and says, hey, wait a minute, Jason Todd from the projects. My name is Gabby. Do you remember me? And Jason looks up like, oh, God. Of course I run into someone from my past, but this is like pre-Batman past. This is when I was like a troubled kid. And turns out that he was getting in a fight. Gabby was this girl his age who no matter how much of a dick he was, he couldn't end up pushing away. And she kept on convincing him like, yeah, things suck right now, but I promise you they will get better. And Jason's like, whatever. I doubt it. There's no way, but maybe. And we see that, he came to now and he's like, oh, I do recognize her. And part of me wants to tell her how her friendship and Jason, all that, how I've ended up and all the things that I've gotten up to, but instead I stand up and I give her a hug and I say, oh, thank you so much for what you did. And she's like, I mean, you were the one who was kicking ass on my behalf. I should be the one thanking you. And he's like, well, you took in a bunch of strays, you were caring for them, it pissed some bullies off. I just showed them the 1-2. And Gabby's like, oh, hey, yeah. And if you're going to be in town for a while, you should come check out the old place. They're doing some cool stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm only in town for the one night. Can't do it. But thank you anyway. And Gabby's like, yeah, no problem. Take care of yourself. So Jason goes off, but he left a tip, which is like several $100s. And she's like, what the hell? So we cut over to a church that is holding an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Obviously, this is Roy's thing. He is not at the meeting, but we see as the meeting is going on, this woman named Mary's talking, and as she's speaking, we cut down into this vent, this grate that leads down into the sewer system, and underneath the sewer is Killer Croc. And Arsenal's whole backstory is he hit rock bottom, and he tried to commit suicide via Killer Croc, and Croc was like, nah, man, let's get you in that 12-step program. So as Croc is listening to Mary share her story, Arsenal comes up, and he's like, hey, man, I'm in town. I just wanted to check up on you. It's been a while since, everything went down between us. And Croc's like, that's pretty much the only honorable thing I've ever done. But, how you doing? And Arsenal's like, I don't know. I've been feeling a little off recently. Like, I thought maybe I was going to relapse, but I don't know. I don't even know who to talk to. And Croc's like, sure you do. And when the time is right, you're going to be able to talk to them. Then we cut over to somewhere on the other side of the Mexican border. We cut to Pallet, who apparently was in issue 1 and got shot up by Red Hood and Arsenal. Sure, whatever. He wakes up and he's like, crap, all these wounds are going to take forever to heal over. And then sitting nearby is Susie Sue, who I can't even remember the last time she was there, but she hates Red Hood and Arsenal, and so she's like, hey, Pallet, let's team up to take down Red Hood and Arsenal. And Pallet's like, all right, sounds good. So we cut back over to Gotham. Red Hood's walking down the streets. He is in full costume. And he's commenting on how Gotham does seem a little bit better, but it's probably because Big Brother is watching. There's a whole bunch of CCTVs. And so he says, sorry, I need some privacy. And he shoots the camera out, which triggers Jim Gordon, Batman, and his team of crime watchers up in a blimp to be like, crap, Red Hood's in our town. Everyone lock and load. We're down in 5. So Arsenal comes pulling up on a motorcycle that I guess he says he traded by giving an EMP arrow to some shop owner who Jason points out, he's probably just going to sell that to like Catwoman or something. Does Roy feel good about that? And Roy's just like, I don't know, it's whatever. I've got a cool bike out of it. So they've arrived at this place, which is apparently the worst point in the whole neighborhood. And they figure Underbelly has to be in there. And Roy's like, why is that? And it turns out that there was a meeting of villains in this place years and years ago. It was after a breakout from Arkham. We have Two-Face, Catwoman, Penguin, Mr. Freeze, Clayface, and Joker. And Joker is trying to tell a story to all the other guys there, like, here's why I gathered you here tonight. And a security guard comes in being like, hello, is someone in here? And Joker just blows him to smithereens. And he's like, boy, I thought that was Batman in disguise. Anyone else think that? And everyone's like, no one else thought that, Joker. What are you talking about? And he's like, all right, well, let me tell you about this little device that I stole, and let me show you what it can do. And all of a sudden, all the other people start laughing, to which point they realize that there's some sort of gas, and Joker's putting them all in Joker gas. So Batman and Robin swoop into the scene. They start kicking ass left, right, and center. But Robin takes special note of the fact of the security guard. And he's like, that's it got to me. It really messed with me there. And this was just pure unadulterated evil. Like, that could have been someone's dad. I don't know. But it just messed with me. And Roy's like, okay, so you think that that's the reason that this place is the root of all evil and the underbelly started there? And Jason's like, look, we never figured out why he killed that guy that night. And there's a bunch of other stuff that happened later on that night as well. And as he's about to start telling that, bat signal comes down. We see Jim Gordon gets in, cuts to the earlier scene. So we cut back to now, and Roy and Jason fire off some smoke to block the sight of Gordon. Even his scanners aren't able to get through it, and he doesn't understand why. But obviously, Jason and Roy come in for the attack, but they're unable to do anything to get through the armor. So immediately, Gordon just throws them aside, being like, did you really think that was going to work? And then in comes with the slow clap Underbelly, saying, I didn't think it would work, but it was entertaining. And Gordon asks whether this is a friend of Jason. Jason's like, why does everyone ask if the weird, creepy ones are friends of mine? And Underbelly basically says, yeah, all right, now I can kill the three of you all at once. So, sure. We didn't get the holographic mimes. I was really curious about the holographic mime story. That was the one that was really sending this into the next level for me. Now, it's honestly, I think this issue is one of the better ones so far, because it's not just a constant string of non sequiturs and quote-unquote jokes. It's actually doing something with the characters. Here's Jason's tragic backstory and someone from his past that he runs into just on chance, and we don't have to turn them into a central core character to the rest of this arc. He's just someone that he moves on from. And then Roy goes back in and checks in with Killer Croc and his whole thing with his addictions. Is it a little bit played out by this point? Yes, but it is so much better than the stuff that is usually happening in this book. So collectively, I think this one easily gets up to the 7 for me. Possibly a 7.5. I think I'd probably give it the 7.5 if I was more pleased with the book in general. But it still is an uphill battle, and I don't want to overrate it just because it's not doing the things I hate as much. It still is an okay book. It's still a fine book. I wouldn't put it towards great, though. So 7 flat, but at least we're making some direction in a proper, or some progress in a proper direction. That's what I meant. All-Stars Section 8, number 4, written by Garth Ennis, art by John McCrae. So last issue we had Martian Manhunter being so terrified of what he saw in the bathroom of Noonan's that he fled off-planet. This issue picks up with Wonder Woman. She is now the core focus of this issue, and she is already at Noonan's. We see Baitor is trying to put up a new sign outside the place with a big mallet, and Wonder Woman's shown up. She's gone into the bar, and we see that the entire rest of All-Star Section 8 are dressed as Wonder Woman because they're trying to get on her good side, and she is already mid-monologue of like, you are all pathetic, you are all pitiful, I would never join you, nor would any other self-respecting superhero. No woman in their right mind would join you imbeciles. Like, none of this was... And immediately, Six-Pack is like, oh, you know, you're Wonder Woman. We were hoping you could give us a little bit of glamour and class. And she's just like, no, you know, I know exactly what you thought, you sick little freak. And no, I'm not going to waste my time here. And I'm never ever going to join you, nor will anyone of any respect, because you are all pathetic. And she says, as her parting lines, anyone willing to join you would have to be suffering from brain damage. And as she exits the bar, Baitor swings the mallet to put up the new sign, and wouldn't you know it bashes her in the face. And as she starts coming to, she's got a childlike aspect to herself. She's very ditzy. She's very, like, she says, oh, my name's Diana, I'm very strong, can I be in your super team? And admittedly, Six-Pack is like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. This is a very strange situation for me. And she just keeps begging until eventually he's like, okay, I guess. And so she just immediately starts screaming, saying how happy she is that she's joining in on the super team. She starts causing chaos all over the bar. And at this point, I think it's Grappla and I'm going to say Drillface because I don't know his name otherwise. They'll start sitting down there like, okay, let's talk this out. What is going to be the best thing to do here? And she's having a tea party with Dog Welder. It's like, all right, so we're going to get in so much trouble when she eventually comes to, because obviously she's eventually going to come to. However, she is literally asking to join the team right now. So do we really have any right to say no if that's what it is? And they go off on this whole long thing about like feminism and equality and stuff like that, trying to make the point that if she wants to do this because of feminism, they should not say no. But at the same time, Six-Pack recognizes that it feels like they're kind of taking advantage here of someone who is not fully aware with all of themselves. And then Grappla goes on a whole long thing about how he's very anti-feminist, and I'm not going to deal with that. So at that point, he goes over to the bar. I can't even remember who this character is, but he's just a normal dude, very big and buff, who's just sitting there reading a book, saying like, yeah, if I read a book about this, if a woman wants to do something, the feminist thing is to just let her do that no matter what. So at that point, we see Wonder Woman is hopping around the bar, causing more chaos. We see Baitor is getting more and more nervous at this, and then she turns around and comes face to face with Bueno Excelente, and she's like, oh, my mama told me there are no such thing as monsters. I guess I was wrong. And then we see that Bueno is standing there with Guts. They are now dating because of last issue. Do not ask about it. And Wonder Woman's so happy to hear that they're dating that she says, we can have a wedding. And then next page, they're in the middle of the wedding, and they're still at Noonan's, and she's acting as the maid of honor. Baitor is doing the ceremony, and he's just reading about how like Lucifer was cast from heaven into a lake of brimstone and fire, and anyone who's not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And he just yells, I am Baitor, over and over again until eventually we make our way through the I do's and the exchanging of rings. So Wonder Woman says, oh, well, you're married now, you can kiss her. And luckily, from an audience standpoint, we don't get to see what happens, but everyone on panel throws up except for Wonder Woman, who giggles and says, he, that's naughty. So as everyone's, enjoying the reception, Wonder Woman's still causing tons of chaos, just knocking people over. We see Grappla comes out of the bathroom and hears Six-Pack talking to Drillface about how sick of him that he is, him just being in quotes there. And it's like, yeah, he's so annoying. I really hate the fact that he's always yelling his stupid line like over and over again. And if I hear him say his name again, I swear to God. And then in comes Grappler going like, hey, I'm the Grappler. What are you guys talking about? And they're like, nothing, man. Don't worry about it. And he's like, no, look, really, who are you sick of? And he's like, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. So at that point, Wonder Woman says, now it's time for the honeymoon. And she starts moving around all the bar chairs and everything she says, I'm going to make a hotel for you guys. And Six-Pack freaks out because he's like, if I know anything about Bueno, it's that he'll do it. He will absolutely go through with that. And this will be crossing a line that even I dare not cross. And Baitor, who's been biting his nails this whole time, finally snaps. And as Wonder Woman is talking to Guts saying like, hey, and after it's done, you can tell us all about it. Girl to girl, tee hee hee. Baitor pulls out the mallet again, smacks Wonder Woman in the face. Six-Pack wets himself, and as Wonder Woman gets up, she brushes herself off, looks over, sees Guts and Bueno in their wedding attire, marches over to Six-Pack. He's wetting himself still, praying to God, and Wonder Woman just says, this never happened. And she's like, yeah, totally, absolutely, yeah, never happened. And look, I'm really sorry. And she's like, sorry for what? This didn't happen. And she starts walking out, and he's like, right, totally, but we're still looking for an 8th member of all that, and like, yeah, maybe if there's any sort of way that. And she's like, look, this is a waste of time, Sydney. You need to stop. And he's like, what? Wait a minute, hold on. Did you just say Sydney? Who's Sydney? What was that? And she's like, I didn't say Sydney. What are you talking about? And he's like, no, you did. I heard you say Sydney. And the other members of the team were like, Six-Pack, she didn't say Sydney. Are you okay? And he just kind of, as she walks out, is just staring at the door like, but who's Sydney? So, all right. I forget exactly what the original story was, but there's this thing that went around of like having an opinion on things. And the idea of it is like, if you were locked in a room with nothing but 10,000 photos, all different, of like Joe Biden eating a sandwich, eventually you would have an opinion on which one is best. Because that's just how humanity is wired. Like, even if you don't have any opinions sitting there at first, as you engorge yourself in the product, eventually you will have an opinion on it. I want to make it clear that my opinion on All-Star Section 8 is all of it is gross. All of it is like absolutely just Garth Ennis 100% going full force. However, within the confines of All-Star Section 8, I think this issue is actually somewhat tame. That is so strange for me to say, because obviously the last 2 issues went very far. The last issue more so than any other one. So coming into this Wonder Woman one, we're playing on some ideas of like, she doesn't really know what she's doing here. Is that the right thing to do? Da-da-da. But like, ultimately this one doesn't really hit as much of heavy points as I think maybe the Batman issue did or the Martian Manhunter issue did. And then in terms of gross out factor, it's also just all implied, a lot more behind the veil than the other ones were as well. Those ones were very much in your face. So all in all, this one is actually kind of like a little boring if you've been reading the series. It's strange to say that, because if I just showed this issue to anybody, they'd say, what the hell is this? But like, on the context of the series, it's a little boring. So I think this one's going to be like a 6.5 for me. The only thing that's keeping it above a 6 is that last page, that last thing of Six-Pack hearing Sydney and like, who's that? Like, it's hinting at the larger ramifications to come, but honestly, I don't trust this book to get there. I think it's just going to be gross out humor in the foreground, and then in the background we might get like a little bit of something, So yeah, 6.5. I don't know what to do anymore. Gotham Academy number 10, written by Brendan Fletcher and Becky Cloonan, art by Carl Kerschel with Masasic on art. So last issue, we had the end of like the whole werewolf thing going on there, but the end of the issue was that Olive thought she saw the ghost of her mom in the theater department, and then all of a sudden everything went up in flames, and she's like, oh my god, it's really her. So we see Pommeline and Olive running away from the theater place, and Olive's like, I saw her, she was there, she was on the balcony, all that. And as they look back at the door to the theater place, out comes the theater director, Simon Trent, who's so over the top and so overly dramatic. And he's coming out like, oh, I can't believe I tried to put on the Scottish play. Oh, it was always going to be cursed. Oh, the show must go on, but how can I do it after, I guess, all their lead actors just bailed and like are definitely not going to do it now anymore? And then in comes Maps's roommate, who her name is Catherine. And she comes in and she's like, sir, I'll be in the play. And he's like, oh, sorry, but this is only available to members of the Gotham Academy Dramatic Arts Society. And she's like, I'm in this society. I auditioned twice, and you said I could be the understudy to the understudy. And he's like, all right, well, I mean, you kind of look familiar. Who are you? And then Olive steps up saying like, hey, I'm also a member of the club. And Trent's just like, Olive! Yes, you're in, along with all of your friends, and not this little blonde girl, because screw her. Not necessarily that, but she takes it that way. So we see Maps, Olive, Pommeline, and Colton are all in the outfits doing the things. We see that she's trying to convince Kyle to do it. Maps is, and Kyle's like, nope, I play tennis already. I'm busy. Bye. So he bounces off. They start doing the 3 Weird Sisters scene, and Pommeline and Maps are like, hey, Olive, why are you in this scene? She's like, oh, well, I'm double playing as Lady Macbeth and one of the Weird Sisters because there's no one else who could possibly take a role. Meanwhile, Catherine's standing off to the side like, so they do the whole double toil trouble scene, and then all of a sudden Simon Trent's like, hold up, whoa, where's the lighting cues? Where's my man at the board? Hey, someone go check on him. And so he's up in there, and he's freaking out, and they're just like, oh, yeah, hey, it's okay if you don't know how to work the board. Hey, you're an artist, not an electrician, because this is Eric, the weird kid from, like, 3 issues ago. And he's like, no, I can work the board. That's super easy, but, like, I saw the Phantom. He was, the Phantom that's been destroying sets ever since we pushed the show together. I saw him up on stage. He wasn't even human. And Olive's like, okay, so I guess this is as good a time as any. Funny story, everybody. But then Maps interrupts, she's like, I know what it was that was hurting people in theater. And Maps is like, you saw it? What was it? What's going on? And she's like, it's my mom. I saw it. It caused the fire from before. And Pommeline interrupts and says like, yeah, that's why we had to join the play, to find the Ghost Calamity. And Maps is like, wait a minute. Pommeline knew about it? You didn't tell me before you told Pommeline? And it's like, it's nothing like that. Like, she was there, and like she literally saw it happen at the same time. Pommeline's like, all right, whatever, we gotta like get down there and search for clues and whatever else. But Colton's already on the case. He's looking around with some magnifying glass, and as Olive and Maps try to talk it out, she's like, I thought we were best friends, you know what I mean? She's like, we are. It's great. We're having a great time. Colton says, hey, by the way, over here we got muddy footprints. And it's like, what? Mud? That's weird. Like, why would an actual ghost lead behind mud? This must be some sort of Scooby-Doo villain instead. So they look and they see that the mud tracks lead to this wall. They think there's a secret passage behind it, but Maps's map says no, there's nothing there. So it's able to walk through walls, but it's not a ghost. To which I was like, but I'm sure it was my mom. And it transitions over to a scene where she's talking to Doctor Strange, Hugo Strange. I can't say Doctor Strange in comics. And he's like, yeah, look, have you seen your mother at all any other times since the funeral? And it's like, yes, I've seen her constantly, but she's dressed as Calamity, and I don't, the paper's saying she did these bad things as Calamity, and I don't know. I feel like she's trying to tell me something. And Hugo Strange is like, okay, first things first, don't be in the play, because like I think doing that is just going to divorce you more from reality. You just need to be yourself right now. Don't try to be anybody else. And then we see cut to, she's Lady Macbeth with the out damn spots. Oh, I say out. So still got some issues. But then all of a sudden, this thing starts dripping on her head. It's mud. And we see this hooded figure tries to drop a sandbag right on her. So everyone in the detective club assembles. They try to chase after her, or chase after the hooded figure. And as they get around the back, they see the hood is there. There is mud left over, but the only other thing is Maps' map. And it's like, wait, but how could they have escaped? We had them on both sides. And Maps is like, wait, but this is my map. No one else knows where this could be unless, oh no. And they go back to Maps' room and they realize it's the roommate. It's Catherine. Of course it is. So as they start looking around, they see the muddy footprints. They follow it into a nearby curtain. And there's Catherine. She's looking all goopy. She's all messed up. She swirls out the window, and Pommeline points out that she's got a murder board with Simon Trent's face on it. So it's like, okay, well, clearly we have to stop her. And so they follow her back down to the auditorium where she's doing a soliloquy on the stage, and Olive's just like, hey, okay, we know you're trying to sabotage the play. Why are you doing all this? And Catherine says, for my father. And then all of a sudden, swirling pillars of clay come around her, and she says there is no Catherine, there is only Clayface. This whole thing was Clayface, and it turns out that he's pissed off at Simon Trent because Simon Trent took all of Basil Carlo's roles back in the day, and so now he's trying to come here and get revenge. And it's like, oh, well, what did you do with Catherine? And it's like, Catherine, she's just an aspect of me. She's not real. I just made her up to do my bidding. So Clayface mentions he was in Arkham. That gets Olive's attention, and then he looks down at Olive saying like, oh, hey, were you one of those Silverlocks? You look kind of like her. Also, your mama's crazy. And Olive just like gets all fierce, and she's like, say that again. I dare you. So at that point, Simon Trent comes out, and they do a monologue off. Like, they just monologue at each other, back and forth, until finally Simon does one that, like, offers his hand out, and he's like, oh, what's gone and what's past? Help should be past grief. And he extends his hand, and Clayface just uppercuts him. Says, like, hell is empty and all the devils are here. So at that point, we see Olive and Maps have gotten a fire hose. They spray down Clayface, which I guess washes him away. I guess that's just one of the things you could do. And left behind is just Catherine, who's calling out for her dad, who I guess is Clayface. She considers Clayface to be the dad. And they dry her off. They walk her home just being like, hey, look, Catherine, don't worry about your dad. We're going to take care of you. You can have Thanksgiving at my place. Like, everything's cool. So they're trying to get Catherine on the side of good. But Olive was like, okay, so it was Clayface the whole time. So, like, why did I see my mom? Like, am I going crazy too? And it's like, no, you've just had a stressful time. It's fine, whatever. And then in comes Pommeline with a newspaper saying, check this out. There's a series of arsons, and they've linked it back to your mom. She got out of Arkham. To which point Olive was like, wait a minute. Well, whose funeral did we go to? So that's the issue. I like I like the character of Catherine as she's portrayed here, because they do one thing as well where they have her do her introduction, and she says Catherine Carr, and she's cut off before she can say her last name of Carlo. So I like that. No, she's, even during her reveal, I think it's a solid moment. This book has always struck me as being written with being adapted to a cartoon in mind. Like, I'm sure that's not actually the case, but all of these beats, the way that it lays out, you could very easily see this just straight adaptation, like nothing having been changed. And I think the moments where the reveal happens would be such a high tension moment. It really does make it really work. So yeah, I'm going to say this one is easily a 7.5 for me. Honestly, yeah, you know what? I'm going up to the 8. I think that this one's very solid. The only thing that's keeping me from like an 8.5 or something like that is that it does feel a little bit cheap to keep on playing with the mom card over and over and over again without any sort of payoff on that. Like, maybe this will be the payoff now of saying like, oh, your mom was seen around town and like she's still committing arsons or whatever. And maybe we will get something out of that. But at this point, it feels like it's so frequently brought up that it's something that's just not ever going to happen, and that's not satisfying in that way. So stick with the 8, but it's got room to grow. Earth 2 Society number 4, written by David H. Wilson, art by Jorge Jimenez. So last issue was kind of the wrap-up of like the prologue, and it turns out that Terry Sloan was murdered. Oh god, the whole Earth is in peril now. So we cut over to Val-Zod, who's off cutting canyons and carving mountains and stuff with his heat vision. And we see as he is making this town out in the middle of nowhere called Nexus, and it seems to be fully populated. It seems to be full of people. Flash is also there. He lands down on the ground, and in comes Batman. And it turns out, as we get this place, I think this was already explained, this planet orbits two suns, one yellow and one red. And when the red sun is closer, it essentially depowers the Kryptonians. So he's at his depowered state right now. And then Dick Grayson Batman comes in and says, hey, Val-Zod, I've done my research. You're powerless when the red sun comes up. I'm here to arrest you on charges of killing Terry Sloan. And Val-Zod just breaks out of the wire he's being held in. He's like, yeah, I may be powerless, but I'm still ridiculously strong. Also, I didn't kill anyone. My whole thing is pacifism. What are you talking about? So Batman launches in, fires a kick, which is able to do something. He's not invulnerable at this point anymore. But then that's where Flash comes in, and he stops the punch and throws Dick off of the edge of whatever mountaintop they're on. He glides down to the bottom, and everyone just meets down at the bottom there. And he calls out Flash for being a coward. He's like, look, after all that stuff that just happened with Terry Sloan, you were nowhere to be seen. You were off doing whatever you wanted here in Nexus. Even Mr. Terrific came out of hiding to try to find you. Like, what is going on here? And we see that in the side of this mountain, there's a town nearby and all that, but in this mountainside is a giant carving of Kara, like of Supergirl, Power Girl, I should say. So Flash and Batman are arguing about saying like, oh, what, you got all this stuff about Kara, what do you need? And then Val-Zod comes down and just like, enough. I'm going to tell you guys both the truth. Here's the secret origin. Here's what went wrong between me and Power Girl. So we get the backstory of how they met and all that from Earth 2, how she was raised in secrecy until, end of the world. Her father / Kal-El seemingly died. Val-Zod was kept down in a bunker. He was doing whatever. And when they both got out, they fought against Apocalypse until Convergence happened. They got separated and then were reunited on the planet. They built the city of Neotropolis together. And they did it with Jimmy Olsen and Flash and all that. And everything was cool. Everything was great. And then one day, as the red sun was coming up, they were just chilling on a hillside, watching the city. And then all of a sudden, giant explosion. And as they go down into the city, they see, a blimp, a rocket ship, a bug, I don't know, something's there, and a whole bunch of people are standing around underneath it, and one of them is wearing an Anarchy shirt, and he's like, oh, hey, yeah, we took these ship engines, and they got lost into chaos, because this is anarchy, and we see all these anarchy people are fighting against the Sandmen, the police group of the city, and Val-Zod's like, he's starting a riot, or, sorry, it is a girl, she's starting a riot. And they're trying to go after them, but because they're depowered, honest to God, I'm not even sure what happens here. A giant laser beam comes down from Overwatch 1, which is like the ship controlled by Terry Sloan, and then they're gone. They disappear. So all of them were teleported out or something like that, and it's like, okay, well, Sloan just attacked a bunch of civilians from orbit. We've got a problem. We don't have our powers. How are we going to stop them? And one of the Sandman comes up and just like, hey, get out of here, lady, and pushes Supergirl or Power Girl, and Val-Zod's like, don't touch her. And for the first time ever, he throws a punch hitting an actual human being, and he's like, oh my god, I've never let myself hit someone. And like, yes, we're depowered, but like that could have killed him if we were powered. I don't know. Felt weird. I'm not saying bad, but weird. So somehow, I don't think they ever explain how, they get up onto the Overwatch 1. I think it's like a teleporter or something like that the Sandmen have. So they start fighting their way depowered through all the guards there. Power Girl picks up a gun and starts carrying it around, and it's just like, okay, so what's our plan? And it's like, well, we're going to go find Sloan and we'll have a chat. So they start making their way through the ship, and they find that part of it has been terraformed, at least slightly so much. He's messing around with the source vault. And Power Girl's like, this is disgusting. This is horrible. To which Sloan comes out saying, like, I mean, you're right. It is gross, but I'm making progress. I'm doing what I can. And Karen's like, all right, I got a gun. Tell us where our ship's engines are, because that's the whole thing that was stolen to begin with. And she's like, that's an excellent question. You know, whoever sent Anarchy to steal those engines, that must be the true enemy. And Balzad's like, it's clearly you, man. Why are you playing coy? Like, you're a liar. Why are we dealing with all this? And it's like, what? No, it couldn't be me. But then Sloan is just like, but Valzad, we have such a history. Karen, didn't you know all the things that Valzad did when he was down in that room? Didn't you wonder how we kept him busy? He's the one who made the fire pits work. He's the one who figured it out. He figured out how to detonate them. The fire pits that Superman died in were because of Valzad. And Power Girl's like, no, that's impossible. And she turns a gun on Valzad, and Val's like, I'm sorry, it's true. It happened. I didn't know what I was building. And she's like, but you never told me afterwards. And he's like, I didn't know how. So she gets so emotional. She's like, oh God, I have to get out of here. I got to think. And so she blows out a window and jumps out of the spaceship that's orbiting the planet and starts falling down to Earth. Valzad follows suit. As they both land in some woods elsewhere, they come across each other, or at least get up. Maybe they were just unconscious. And Valzad is honestly curious. He's like, wait a minute, hold on. How did we even survive that? That's not right. And Kara's like, no, you know what? I don't care. You're a monster. And worse than that, we're on the CW. So you're a liar. And she blasts him away with some heat vision because the powers are back. He's blasting into a wall. And he just takes it. He's like, yeah, no, you're right. Billions of people's blood is on my hands. This is all my fault. And so we cut back to now, telling the story to Batman. And Batman's like, so you're telling me that a superpowered person went into hiding because he got his heart broken? Yeah, all right, that tracks. That works for me. And Flash is like, I told you, Batman. It wasn't anything like awful. It wasn't like, anything major. So at that point, Batman's like, look, all right, if you didn't kill Sloan, we need to find out who did. Stop hiding out here with this coward. And we see Mr. Terrific's trying to call and get Batman's attention. But because he's triggered Flash with the coward line again, they just start arguing and yelling at each other. Valzad eventually intervenes, and Mr. Terrific shouts out like, hey, yo, Batman, really need you because the spaceship out in space has been hacked. Its engines are disabled. It's plummeting towards the Earth, straight towards Neotropolis, and also it's got a giant anarchy symbol on the side of it. So, problems. In terms of this series, this issue is probably the best it's been. Like, I've always wanted to give this series credit because it always felt like it did have a larger plan. It was just getting so lost in the scale, I guess is the best way to say it. It's so like, oh, we've got this entire planet and all these cities and we have to explain how they were all formed. And also there's this big plan of the Genesis Vault and all this other stuff with Terry Sloan and da-da-da. And I'm like, just pick a place, pick a one of the cities and one group of people who are kind of annoyed and just run with that. Make a story off of that. Now we're getting this anarchy thing and we're saying, okay, a year ago, they stole the engines off this ship. Clearly they've been having plans and they're probably the ones who are responsible for killing Terry Sloan. I don't think the first 3 issues are really going to matter, except for the fact that Terry Sloan died. Then picking up on it now, they're taking this ship out of orbit. I'm down with all this. I'm into it. I'm understanding the plot. It's very easily accessible. So kudos on that. We're finally getting to a good issue here. That being said, it is still mostly a flashback issue, and it's about what happened between Valzad and Kara, which frankly is like the least I cared about between all of the new relationships here. But if we got to do it, we got to do it. I'm going to say this one is a flat 7. It's good. It's fine. It's not great, but it has the potential. It's almost there. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this September 9th, 2015. And look, it is well after midnight on the day that this needs to go up. I still have to edit it. I have work today, and I would love to sit here and tell you, hey, here's how my move went. I'd love to give you the intricacies of that. However, I'm just going to shorten it down to 2 words of Comcast sucks, and you can just extrapolate from there. You can get the gist of it. In terms of everything coming out next week, I can tell you that. That's very much within my purview. So next week, we have a bunch of the new DCU series. We've got Bizarro, Black Canary, Constantine the Hellblazer, Dr. Fate, Doomed, Green Lantern, The Lost Army, Harley Quinn, Martian Manhunter, Prez, Robin Son of Batman, Secret Six, Superman/Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman. So all that is coming out next week. 13 comics. Luckily, no specials. I checked this time, so it should just be a normal, totally breezy, no surprises episode. I look forward to seeing how my entire setup that I have jerry-rigged for this episode to come out is going to fail magnificently. But if you have any comments on any of the comics I talked about last week, this week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comment section down below this video, or you can join us on one of our multiple other places. In case you're not watching the video version, we have a subreddit, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon. All the links to those are in descriptions of various things. Oh, by the way, I'm sure like 95% of you have clicked off at this point, but for the ones still listening, we got a comment on last week's episode from Bernard Chang, who is the artist of Batman Beyond, among numerous other things, but Batman Beyond being the one that he was commenting about, who was very upset that I gave his book a 7. To him I said, and I responded as such, 7 is fine, 7 is good, plenty of my friends are 7s, and the art is not the problem with that book. The art is actually pretty much the only saving grace of that, because the growing pains of Future's End will never end. At least not as far as I could see. So if that book ever gets the writing on board, the art's fantastic. So thank you, Bernard Chang, for checking out the show. I'm sure you're not listening to this one, but, you know, pass it along to him. Do like the elementary school passing the note thing and just get it to Bernard Chang, because I want him to know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in to next week's episode. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.